When I arrived at my wife's sister's engagement party that I paid for, my wife's dad sent me to the service entrance. He didn't know I owned the hotel or that his family was about to learn it the hard way. The invitation arrived on a Thursday, not in my hands first. That would have required someone to think of me as worthy of direct delivery. No, it came tucked inside my wife's purse, edges already softened from being handled, passed around, discussed by everyone except me. I found it while looking for her phone charger, that cream-colored rectangle of expensive cardstock, embossed letters catching the afternoon light streaming through our bedroom window. Mr. and Mrs. Gregory Harrison cordially invite you to celebrate the engagement of their daughter, Melissa Harrison, to Christopher Ashford. My wife's name, our names, technically, appeared in elegant script beneath the main text, but only as recipients, contributors, expected attendees. I read it 3 times before I understood what bothered me about the phrasing, about the whole elaborate presentation of what should have been a family announcement. There was no mention of who was funding this celebration. That would be me. I sat on the edge of our bed, the invitation heavy in my hands despite being just paper and ink, and felt something shift in my chest. Not quite anger, not yet, just a recognition, like the moment you realize you've been hearing a strange sound in your house for weeks and suddenly understand it's not supposed to be there. Sarah found me like that 20 minutes later. She'd been in the bathroom, the sound of running water and the scent of her expensive moisturizer, the kind I paid for without comment every month, preceding her into the room. She stopped when she saw me, one hand still rubbing cream into her forearm, her expression flickering through several emotions too quickly for me to name them all. "You found the invitation," she said. Not a question, an observation, maybe an accusation, though of what I couldn't say. "I was looking for your charger." I held up the invitation, watched her eyes track it like it might explode. "When were you planning to mention this?" She resumed moisturizing, her movements deliberate, controlled. Sarah had always been good at that, controlling her body language, her tone, presenting exactly the image she wanted people to see. It was one of the things that had attracted me to her 7 years ago, that self-possession. Now it felt like watching someone fortify a wall. "I was going to tell you tonight at dinner," she said, moving to her dresser, selecting earrings from the jewelry box I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. Tiffany. She'd specified the exact model. Melissa wanted to do a formal announcement. Formal. I repeated the word, tasting its weight. "And the party? The celebration mentioned here? When were we going to discuss that?" Her hands stilled, just for a moment, but I caught it. 7 years of marriage teaches you to read the pauses. "Well, of course we'll contribute something. She's my baby sister." Contribute. Another word to examine, to turn over like a stone hiding something underneath. "Sarah, I've already written a check to your father for $43,000. 2 weeks ago. For the venue, the catering, the flowers, everything." She turned then, and I saw it clearly on her face. She'd known I would find out. She just hadn't expected it to be today, holding the invitation neither of us was supposed to question. "Daddy said he would handle discussing it with you. He didn't want to make it awkward." Awkward? I stood, set the invitation on the dresser between us. "Your father asked me to fund your sister's engagement party at the Meridian Grand," I noticed. "Very nice choice. And we've reached the point of sending formal invitations, and he thought discussing it with me would be awkward?" "Marcus." She said my name like a sigh, like I was being difficult about something obvious. "You know how my family is. They value tradition, formality. Daddy was going to bring it up properly, but Melissa was so excited about getting the venue she wanted, and you've always been generous with family events." "I have been," I interrupted, surprising both of us. I rarely interrupted Sarah. Another thing 7 years had taught me: pick your battles, save your words for when they matter. But something about holding that invitation, about the casual mention of $43,000 as an afterthought, had shifted my internal calculus. "I paid for your mother's birthday cruise last year, the one to Alaska. I paid for your brother's car repairs. I paid the down payment on your cousin's business. I've written checks to your father 4 times in the last 6 months alone. And we appreciate it." She was using her patient voice now, the one that made me feel like I was being unreasonable. You know, my family isn't, we're not like yours, Marcus. We have different expectations, different standards. My father built his reputation in this city, and maintaining that requires money. I said it flatly. It requires my money. She flinched, actually flinched, like I'd said something crude. That's not fair. You married into this family. You knew what that meant. Did I? The question hung between us, genuine and strange, because standing there in our bedroom, the bedroom in the house I'd bought, in the neighborhood she'd chosen, furnished with pieces she'd selected from catalogs I'd paid for, I genuinely didn't know what I'd signed up for anymore. Sarah's family had seemed elegant when we were dating, sophisticated. Gregory Harrison with his silver hair and country club membership, his wife Patricia with her charity boards and society connections. They'd welcome me warmly enough if you didn't look too closely at the welcome. If you didn't notice how they smiled with their mouths but not their eyes when I spoke about my business, my background, my family. I'd grown up in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs where my father worked as an electrician and my mother managed a dental office. We weren't poor, we weren't rich. We were comfortable, stable, the kind of middle class that doesn't make for interesting stories at cocktail parties. I'd put myself through community college, then state university, worked 3 jobs, and graduated with a business degree and a chip on my shoulder about proving something to someone, though I'd never been entirely clear about who. The Harrisons, by contrast, were old money, or at least they performed old money convincingly. They lived in a house with a name, Willowcrest, like it was an estate in an English novel, in the part of town where the streets curved deliberately to discourage through traffic. Gregory had an office downtown with his name on the door and the kind of vague professional title that could mean anything. Consultant, advisor, executive director of his own firm that seemed to do a lot of networking and very little actual work. I'd bought into it, literally and figuratively. Been flattered that they'd accepted me, that Sarah had chosen me. I'd worked hard to show them I could provide for their daughter in the manner she deserved. That my lack of pedigree didn't mean a lack of ambition or capability. Somewhere along the way, providing had become funding everything while pretending not to notice. The party is in 2 weeks, Sarah said, pulling me back to the present. She'd finished with her earrings, was now examining herself in the mirror with the critical eye she applied to everything, looking for flaws to correct. Melissa's so excited. Christopher's family is flying in from Connecticut. It's going to be beautiful. At the Meridian Grand. Yes, she smiled, still looking at her reflection rather than at me. You know how much she's always loved that hotel? When she was little, she used to make Daddy drive past it just so she could look at the chandeliers through the windows. Something in my chest pulled tight. Sarah, I said carefully, do you know who owns the Meridian Grand? She paused, finally meeting my eyes in the mirror. Some corporation, I assume. Witte. Because I do. The words came out quieter than I'd intended, but they landed like stones in still water. I watched the ripples cross her face. Confusion, disbelief, something that might have been fear if she'd let it fully form. What? I own the Meridian Grand, have for 3 years, along with 4 other properties in the city. It's my business, Sarah, my actual business, not whatever your family thinks I do. She turned to face me fully now, the careful composition of her expression cracking. That's not possible. You work in property management. You've never mentioned. I work in property acquisition and development. I manage my own portfolio. The company is called Thornhill Properties. I paused, let that settle. We've discussed this multiple times. You've just never been interested in the details. That was true, and we both knew it. Whenever I tried to talk about work, about acquisitions or developments, or the actual substance of how I spent my days, Sarah's eyes would glaze over. She'd make appropriately impressed sounds, tell me how proud she was, then change the subject to something more immediate. Her sister's new boyfriend, her mother's charity luncheon, her father's opinions about the economy. I'd learned to stop trying. You're saying, she gestured vaguely, trying to catch up. You're saying you own the hotel where we're having Melissa's party. I'm saying your father asked me to pay $43,000 to rent a venue I own, that I signed a check to cover the cost of using my own property. The silence that followed was almost physical. I could hear the clock on the nightstand, the distant sound of traffic from the street below, the rasp of my own breathing. Well, Sarah said finally, and something in her voice had changed, hardened. I still don't see what the problem is. It's the same amount of money either way. And now you don't have to pay the rental fee, so it actually saves you money in the long run. I stared at her. Sarah, your father charged me to use my own hotel. He didn't know it was yours. He didn't ask. He didn't bother to learn anything about what I do or who I am beyond being your husband with the checkbook. I could hear my voice rising, fought to control it. This wasn't how I wanted to have this conversation. But then again, I'd never wanted to have this conversation at all. And neither did you, apparently. Her jaw tightened. I know plenty about you, Marcus. I know you're being incredibly ungrateful right now. My family accepted you. They welcomed you into their circle, into their life. Do you have any idea how many doors that opened for you? How many connections you have made through my father? What connections? Excuse me? What connections have I made through your father, Sarah? Name 3 business contacts I've gotten through him. 3 deals. 3 anything that came from being part of his circle. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You're being deliberately obtuse. It's not about direct transactions. It's about reputation, standing, being part of a community that matters. A community that thinks I'm the help. No one thinks that. Your father charged me to use my own hotel, Sarah, for your sister's engagement party. And you just told me it doesn't matter because it's the same amount of money either way. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Do you know what that tells me? It tells me your family has no idea who I am or what I do, and neither do you. That is not fair, isn't it? I moved past her to the closet, started pulling out a jacket. Let me ask you something. When we go to this engagement party in 2 weeks, where do you think your family will want me to sit? At our table, obviously, with the family. And when the toasts start, do you think anyone will mention that I paid for the event? That I'm the reason Melissa gets to celebrate at her dream venue? Sarah's silence was answer enough. I didn't think so, I said softly. Because that would be awkward, wouldn't it? Acknowledging that the person you all barely tolerate is the one making all of this possible. We don't barely tolerate you. But her voice lacked conviction. Marcus, you're being paranoid. My family loves you. Your family loves my bank account. There's a difference. I shrugged on the jacket, checked my pockets for my wallet and keys. I needed to leave, to get out of this house before I said something I couldn't take back. Or before I said something I absolutely could take back but would regret anyway, which was perhaps worse. Where are you going? Sarah asked, and then there was something fragile in her voice now, like she was starting to realize this conversation had gone somewhere unexpected and possibly dangerous. For a drive, I need to think. About what? About a lot of things, Sarah. About how I'm going to handle this party. About whether I want to keep funding your family's lifestyle without so much as a thank you. About what kind of marriage we actually have if you don't even know what I do for a living. I left before she could respond, took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator, my footsteps echoing in the marble foyer that Sarah had insisted on when we renovated last year. Imported marble, hand-selected in Italy. I'd written that check too, without comment, because making her happy had seemed important at the time. Outside, the evening was cooling into that perfect temperature that made you remember why people paid premium prices to live in this city. I got in my car, not the flashy sports car Sarah thought I should drive to match our status, but the reliable sedan I preferred because it didn't make a statement I didn't want to make, and just drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. Or maybe I did, subconsciously, because 40 minutes later I found myself pulling into the parking lot of the Meridian Grand. The Meridian Grand rose 12 stories above the downtown streets, all elegant limestone and Art Deco details. The kind of building that made you feel like you'd stepped back into 1925 when things were supposedly more refined. It had been built by a railroad magnate with more money than taste, or so the story went, then passed through various owners until it landed in a distressed properties auction 3 years ago. I'd bought it for $11 million, which everyone told me was insane. The building was beautiful but outdated, struggling to compete with the modern glass towers that had sprung up around it. The previous owners had let maintenance slide, let standards slip, let the reputation that had once made the Meridian the place to host society events drift into nice but not necessary. The auction estimate had been $8 million. I'd paid more because I saw what others didn't. Bones. Good bones, great bones actually. High ceilings, original millwork, a ballroom with acoustics that made you understand why people got married before the invention of microphones. All it needed was investment, attention, someone who understood that luxury isn't about being new. It's about being intentional. I'd spent 2 years renovating, carefully, respectfully bringing the building back to its original glory while updating the infrastructure to modern standards. New HVAC hidden behind historical grills, Wi-Fi routers disguised as decorative elements, elevators that work like Swiss watches but look like they'd been there since the beginning. When we reopened, the bookings had been slow at first, then steady, then overwhelming. Because it turned out people were tired of generic luxury. They wanted personality, history, stories they could tell about the venue that made their own events feel significant. Now the Meridian Grand was booked solid 18 months in advance, with a waiting list that made my operations manager giddy. We charged premium rates and people paid them gladly, grateful for the chance to host their weddings, their galas, their celebrations in a place that actually meant something. And Sarah's father had looked at his youngest daughter, had seen her excitement about this hotel, and had decided to give her what she wanted using my money to rent my property. The bitter irony was almost beautiful. I sat in the parking lot for a long time, just looking at the building. The facade was lit now, warm gold against the darkening sky, the lobby chandelier visible through the tall windows. From here I could see people moving inside, staff preparing for whatever event was scheduled tonight, guests arriving early, the choreographed dance of hospitality that happened every night under my ownership. My phone buzzed. "Sarah, please come home. We should talk about this properly." I stared at the message, imagined going home, having the proper conversation she wanted. She would apologize for not knowing about my business, would say she'd been distracted, busy with her own life. She would promise to pay more attention. She would probably cry, because Sarah cried when she needed to, when it would move things in her favor. And I would accept the apology because that's what I always did. I would write the check for Melissa's party, would show up in my good suit, would smile and make small talk and pretend not to notice when her family treated me like the hired help. Except this time there was a wrinkle. This time they were having the party in my hotel. My phone buzzed again. Not Sarah this time. My general manager, Denise Chen. "Boss, we need your sign-off on the Harrison event contracts. Client is pushing for specific concessions on the bar package. Want me to handle or do you want eyes on it?" I typed back, "I'll handle it. Coming in now." Denise responded immediately. "Everything okay?" "Define okay," I sent. Then, "Actually, everything's fine. Just some family complications. I'll explain later." I got out of the car, took a moment to straighten my jacket, and walked into my hotel. The lobby always made me pause, even after 3 years of ownership. The chandelier alone, original Baccarat crystal, refurbished at enormous expense, caught the light like it was performing. The marble floors gleamed. The front desk, mahogany and brass, curved gracefully against the far wall. Everything whispered old money, real quality, the kind of elegance you couldn't fake. "Mr. Thornhill," the night manager Robert greeted me with a smile. "Wasn't expecting to see you this evening." "Impromptu visit," I said. "Is Denise still in her office?" "Conference room, actually, going over the Harrison setup with the events team." Of course she was. Denise ran this hotel like a Swiss watch, every detail considered and reconsidered until it was perfect. It was why I'd hired her away from a luxury chain at triple what they were paying her, and why I'd never regretted it. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where the administrative offices lived behind a discreet door marked staff only. The conference room was lit up, voices audible before I even pushed the door open, insisting on premium top shelf for the duration. But that's not what was contracted. And at this volume, we're talking about an additional $6,000 minimum. Denise broke off when she saw me, her expression shifting from professional frustration to something more complicated. She knew. Maybe not the details, but enough to make her careful. Marcus, good timing. We've got some questions about the Harrison contract. The room held 4 people besides Denise. Jessica from catering, Thomas from events, Maria from operations, and someone I didn't recognize, young, eager-looking, probably an assistant. Walk me through it, and I said, taking a seat at the head of the table. From the beginning, Denise pulled up the contract on the large screen, and I tried not to react as I saw my own signature on the client approval form, the check I'd written to cover the deposit. Standard platinum package, Denise began, full venue rental, catering for 200 guests, premium bar package with mid-shelf liquor, standard floral arrangements, 5-hour event window with 2-hour setup. Total came to $43,000 after all fees and services. But now the father, Jessica consulted her notes. Gregory Harrison is requesting we upgrade the bar package to ultra premium without adjusting the price. He's saying it was discussed verbally and should have been included. Was it discussed verbally? I asked. Not with us, Thomas said firmly. I handled the initial consultation. He asked about the ultra premium package. I quoted him the price difference. He declined and said the premium package would be sufficient. But now he's insisting otherwise? Insisting is putting it mildly, Denise said dryly. He called my cell phone at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday to tell me that we were providing inadequate service to a family of their standing and that he expected us to make this right. Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest. His standing, I repeated. His words, not mine. Denise looked at me carefully. Marcus, I know this is a family connection for you. If you want to approve the upgrade as a courtesy... No, the word came out harder than I intended. Everyone in the room shifted. No, I said again, more controlled. He contracted for premium. He gets premium. If he wants ultra premium, he pays the difference. That's policy for every client. Even for family? Maria asked softly. Especially for family. I stood, moved to the screen, studied the contract. What else has he requested? They exchanged glances. Thomas cleared his throat. Extended event time. He wants 7 hours instead of 5, including setup. Also wants exclusive access to the rooftop terrace for photos, which is normally a separate rental. And he winced. He asked if we could do something about the service staff to make sure they were presentable enough for his guests. I went very still. Explain that last part. He wanted to ensure our staff met certain aesthetic standards. His words were that this was a high society event and he needed people who looked the part. The silence in the room was deafening. And what did you tell him? I asked, my voice very calm. I told him all our staff are highly trained professionals who exceed industry standards for both skill and presentation, Thomas said, his own voice tight. I may have also mentioned that we have strict anti-discrimination policies. Good, I looked at Denise. Send him a revised quote. Ultra premium bar package, extended hours, rooftop access. Itemize every single add-on he's requested. Include the policy language about our contracts being binding and changes requiring written approval and adjusted payment. You want me to charge him for the upgrades? I want you to charge him for the upgrades he's requesting, yes. Is that a problem? No, Denise smiled slowly. No problem at all, though I suspect he won't be happy about it. Then he can take his event elsewhere, I paused. Actually, check our cancellation policy. What's the penalty if he cancels now? Jessica pulled up the document. 2 weeks out? Full deposit is non-refundable, plus he'd owe 20% of the total contract as a cancellation fee. Good. I did the mental math. So that would be roughly $12,000 he'd forfeit. You want him to cancel? Denise asked carefully. I want to give him the option. Sometimes people make choices when they realize those choices have consequences. I returned to my seat, suddenly exhausted. Look, I know this is complicated. This is my sister-in-law's engagement party, my wife's family, and normally I'd probably just eat the cuts, approve the upgrades, whatever keeps the peace. But, Denise prompted, but I'm tired of keeping peace with people who don't even know they're at war with me. I looked around the table at these people who worked for me, with me, who'd helped build something we were all proud of. Gregory Harrison charged me $43,000 to rent my own hotel. He has no idea I own this place, none of them do. And now he's making demands and pulling rank based on his standing while treating our staff like props. Understanding dawned on several faces. He doesn't know you're the owner, Maria said slowly. He doesn't even know what I do for a living. Neither does my wife, apparently. They think I'm some kind of property manager. Middle management, comfortable salary, nothing special. Definitely nothing that would make me someone to respect. Jesus, Thomas muttered. Yeah, I rubbed my face. So here's what we're going to do. Send him the revised quote, professional, courteous, by the book. If he accepts and pays for the upgrades, great. We provide our usual excellent service. If he argues or demands special treatment, Denise, you refer him to the owner for approval. To you. To me, but he won't know that yet. I smiled, and it felt strange on my face, sharp-edged. Let's see how he treats people when he thinks he needs something from them. Denise leaned back, studying me. You're setting a trap. I'm enforcing our policies. There's a difference. Is there? Maybe not. I stood again restless, but I need to know something. I need to know how he acts when he doesn't think I'm watching, how they all act, because if I'm going to keep funding their lifestyle, I'd at least like to do it with my eyes open. The meeting wrapped up shortly after, assignments distributed, everyone clear on how to handle the Harrison account. Professional courtesy, standard policies, no special treatment without owner approval, and the owner was suddenly very interested in being involved in every detail. After they left, Denise lingered. You want to talk about it? She asked. Not particularly. You're going to anyway, aren't you? I laughed despite myself. Probably. She settled back into her chair, patient. Denise was 53, had worked in hospitality for 30 years, had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. She'd taken me seriously when I'd bought this place at 34 years old, had listened to my vision for what it could become, had told me I was both insane and absolutely right. We'd become friends, in the way that people who build something together become friends. She knew about Sarah's family, had listened to me vent after holidays and family dinners, had never said outright that my in-laws were using me, but had never had to. My wife didn't know I owned this hotel, I said finally. 3 years we've owned it. 3 years of me talking about work, about deals, about properties, and she didn't know. Did you tell her directly? I tried multiple times. She wasn't interested in the details. She knew I worked in property management, her words, and that was enough. And her family? Think I'm some kind of middle management paper pusher. Nice enough, checks clear, but nothing special. Definitely not someone who owns the premier event venue in the city. Denise was quiet for a moment. Are you going to tell them? Before the event? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should, just to see their faces. But part of me, I trailed off, trying to articulate the feeling. Part of me wants to watch, to see how they act when they think I'm nobody, to see if my wife's sister thanks me for paying for her party, or if my father-in-law acknowledges what I've done, or if they all just take it for granted because that's what the help does. That's cold, Marcus. Was it? Or is it just seeing things clearly for the first time? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I left the hotel an hour later, after reviewing the Harrison contract in detail, after making notes about every interaction, every request, every assumption built into how they had approached booking this venue. Gregory Harrison had been imperious with it, Denise, condescending with Thomas, casual in his assumption that his name and his standing would be enough to get whatever he wanted. He'd never asked who owned the hotel, never thought to research it, to understand who he was dealing with. Why would he, He assumed everyone existed to serve him, that his social position made him inherently superior to the people providing services. I wondered if he'd ever once looked at me, at the man who'd married his daughter, who'd been family for 7 years, and seen an actual person, or if I'd always just been a function, a checkbook, a solution to the problem of maintaining their lifestyle without questioning where the money came from. My phone buzzed again as I pulled into our driveway. Sarah, of course. Are you coming home? I made dinner. I stared at the message, at the assumption that food would fix this, that we could sit down at the table I'd paid for, in the house I'd bought, and everything would smooth over because that's what always happened. On my way, I sent back. But I sat in the car for 5 more minutes first, looking at our house, our beautiful, expensive house in the right neighborhood with the right address, and wondered when I'd stopped thinking of it as home and started thinking of it as another property I maintained. Sarah had made pasta. Or rather, she'd had pasta delivered from the Italian place on 5th Street that charged $35 for a plate of carbonara. The takeout containers were still on the counter, elegant black with the restaurant's gold logo, the kind of packaging that wanted you to know you were eating something special even if you weren't. She'd plated it nicely, though, transferred it to our good dishes. The Wedgwood said her mother had insisted we needed for proper entertaining. Added fresh Parmesan, a garnish of basil that definitely hadn't come with the delivery. Set the table with cloth napkins and our everyday wine glasses, which probably cost more than my first car. It looked like an apology, or at least it looked like Sarah's version of an apology, which was to say, I acknowledge that you're upset and I'm making an effort. But I'm not entirely sure what I'm apologizing for. It's from Gino's, she said as I came in, her voice carefully neutral. I know you like their carbonara. I did like their carbonara. That wasn't the point, but explaining why it wasn't the point would require a conversation I wasn't sure I had the energy for. Thanks, I said instead, and meant it, at least partially. It looks good. We sat, we ate. The pasta was excellent because, of course, you don't charge $35 a plate for mediocre carbonara. Sarah poured wine, also expensive, also my money, also not the point. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, after we'd made it through several minutes of loud silence broken only by silverware on china. About the hotel, about me not knowing. I waited. And you're right, I should have paid more attention. I should have asked more questions about your work. She was using her reasonable voice, the one she employed when she decided to be the mature one in the conversation. I get caught up in my own life, in my family's needs, and I forget that you have a whole professional world I'm not part of. I've tried to include you, I said quietly, multiple times. I know, and I'm sorry I didn't listen better. She reached across the table, covered my hand with hers. Her skin was soft, moisturized, her nails perfectly manicured. But Marcus, you have to understand, my family has very specific ways of doing things, traditions, expectations. They're from a different world than what you grew up in. There it was, the gentle reminder that my background was lesser, that I should be grateful they'd accepted me at all. Different how, I asked, leaving my hand where it was but not returning her grip. You know how, the social obligations, the maintaining of appearances. My father has a reputation in this city. He's on boards. He's connected to the right people. That takes work, Marcus. It takes constant attention to details, to relationships. Does it take my money? Her hand withdrew. That's not fair, isn't it? Sarah, in the last year alone, I've given your family over $100,000. Your mother's birthday cruise, $15,000. Your brother's car repairs, $8,000, and that was for a luxury vehicle he couldn't afford to maintain in the first place. Your father's business investment that never materialized, $25,000. Your cousin's bakery that closed after 6 months, $30,000. And now this party, $43,000. Do you see a pattern? She'd gone very still, her face carefully blank. Those were all family needs. Were they? Or were they wants? Because I'm starting to lose track of the difference. I set down my fork, the appetite I hadn't really had, disappearing completely. Your father is supposedly this wealthy, well-connected pillar of society. Your mother has a house with a name and a wine cellar and a gardener who comes twice a week. They live in a neighborhood where the average house costs $3 million. And yet somehow I'm the one funding everything. My parents have expenses you don't understand. Maintaining their lifestyle is not my job, Sarah. The words hung there, sharp and clear. Her eyes widened slightly, like I'd said something shocking. Maybe I had. In 7 years of marriage, I'd never once suggested that her family's financial needs were anything but my responsibility. They're family, she said carefully. You help family. Do they help me? Have they ever, even once, done something for me that didn't benefit them? That's not how it works with my family. They provide connections, access, social capital. Name one connection, one door that opened because of your father, one business opportunity I got from being part of his circle. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. You can't quantify everything like that. Some benefits are intangible. Intangible. I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. You know what's not intangible? The $100,000 I've spent on your family this year. The house we live in, Matt, I bought. The car you drive that I paid for. The clothes in your closet, the jewelry on your dresser, the wine we're drinking right now. All of it is very tangible, Sarah. All of it came from my work, my investments, my business that you couldn't be bothered to learn about. I said I was sorry about that. Are you sorry that I found out? She flinched. What is that supposed to mean? It means I'm starting to wonder if the reason you never asked about my work is because you didn't want to know. Because as long as you didn't know the details, you could maintain this fiction that your family was graciously allowing me into their world instead of the other way around. That's ridiculous. Is it? Your father asked me to fund a party at my own hotel, Sarah. He charged me rent on a property I own. And when I told you this, your response was that it saves me money in the long run because I don't have to pay the rental fee. I leaned forward. Do you know what that tells me? It tells me that you don't think of my business as real. You think of it as some kind of service job, something that exists to support your family's actual life. I have never thought that. Then what do you think I do all day? The question was simple. The silence that followed was not. You manage properties, she said finally. You've said that. You acquire them and manage them and deal with tenants and maintenance and I own them, Sarah. I'm not a property manager. I'm a property owner. I have a portfolio worth $18 million. I employ 47 people across 5 buildings. The Meridian Grand alone generates $2 million in revenue per year. I watched her face as the numbers landed. I'm not middle management. I'm not comfortable but modest. I'm successful, very successful. And your family has no idea because they've never bothered to ask, and you've never bothered to correct them. Her face had gone pale. 18 million? Give or take, it fluctuates with the market. How do I not know this? Because you never asked. Because every time I tried to talk about work, you changed the subject. Because it was easier for you to think of me as your employee than as your equal. That is not true, but her voice wavered. Then prove it. Tell me 3 things about what I do. 3 actual facts about my business. She stared at me, and I could see her mind working. Trying to pull together fragments of conversations she'd half listened to, details she'd filed away as unimportant. You own buildings, multiple buildings, and you renovate them? That's 1. 2 more. You work with tenants, commercial tenants, I think, restaurants and shops, and wrong. Most of my properties are event venues, hotels specifically. Try again. She was starting to look desperate now, cornered. Marcus, this isn't fair. You can't expect me to memorize every detail of... I'm not asking for details. I'm asking for basic facts about how I spend 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week. I'm asking for evidence that you see me as a person with a life beyond funding yours. I do see you that way. Then why didn't you know that I own the hotel where your sister is getting married? Why didn't you mention that little fact to your father when he was planning this party? Because I didn't know. Her voice rose, cracked. I didn't know, okay? I'm sorry I didn't know, but you can't blame me for that. You should have told me more clearly. You should have sat me down and explained. I shouldn't have to sit you down and explain my entire career to you, Sarah. You're my wife. You should be interested. You should want to know. The truth of that settled over us like a weighted blanket. She looked away first, picked up her wine glass, set it down without drinking. What do you want from me? She asked finally, and she sounded genuinely confused. Do you want me to apologize? To promise I'll pay more attention? To be different somehow? Because I don't understand what you're asking for here. And that, I realized, was the actual problem. She genuinely didn't understand. Didn't see why it mattered that she'd never learned about my work, never showed interest in my achievements, never asked questions about the source of the money that funded her life. To her, those things were separate. I was her husband, and that was one box. My work was another box. The money that flowed from one box to the other was just how things worked, as natural and unremarkable as water running downhill. It had never occurred to her that I might want to be seen, that I might need her to be curious about who I was beyond my function in her life, that after 7 years of marriage, she should know more about me than what I liked for dinner. I want you to understand why this hurts, I said slowly. Your father asked me to pay for your sister's engagement party at my hotel. And neither of you knew it was my hotel because neither of you has ever cared enough to learn what I actually do. Do you see how that makes me feel? Can you imagine what it's like to be invisible to your own family? You're not invisible. We see you. You see a checkbook, Sarah. That's not the same thing. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of not caring about you. I love you, Marcus. I chose you. I married you. I've built a life with you. Just because I don't interrogate you about every detail of your business doesn't mean I don't care. Then what does it mean? It means we have different priorities. It means my family has needs and obligations that require attention. It means I trusted you to handle the financial side of our life so I could handle everything else. The social obligations, the family relationships, the maintaining of our status. That's how we divided things. That's how this works. And what do I get in return? The question stopped her cold. What? You said that's how we divided things. You handle social obligations and family relationships. I handle money. So what do I get? What's my benefit in this arrangement? You get us, this life, being part of my family, your family that doesn't know who I am. Being part of this community, that treats me like staff. Having a beautiful home, a successful marriage, that only exists because I fund it. She stared at me and something ugly flickered across her face. So that's what this is really about. Money, you're keeping that score, adding up what you've spent, deciding we're not worth it. That's not, no, I get it now. You're one of those people who keeps a ledger, who tallies every favor and expects exact repayment. How transactional of you, Marcus. How working class. The words hit like a slap. Not because they were particularly clever or cutting, but because they revealed something I'd suspected but never seen stated so plainly. She looked down on me, on where I came from, on how I thought, on the parts of me that didn't fit her family's mold. I stood slowly, carefully, like I was moving through water. I think, I said, my voice very calm, that I'm going to stay somewhere else tonight. Panic flashed across her face. Marcus, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. You did mean it, that's the problem. I moved past her toward the stairs. You meant every word. You think my concerns are petty because I'm petty. You think I should be grateful your family tolerates me because I should be grateful. You think keeping track of $100,000 in a year is working class instead of the basic financial awareness. Marcus, please. I'm going to pack a bag. I'm going to go to one of my properties. You know, the ones you've never asked about. And I'm going to think very carefully about what I want the next 7 years of my marriage to look like, if I want them at all. She followed me upstairs, her voice rising. You can't leave. Not like this. Not over something so stupid. I spun on her. It's not stupid, Sarah. That's what you don't understand. This is my entire life, my work, my achievements, my identity, all of it invisible to you. And when I point that out, you mock me for caring. So yes, I'm leaving. Tonight. Tomorrow you can explain to your family why I won't be attending Sunday dinner. I'm sure they won't mind. They barely notice when I'm there anyway. I packed quickly, efficiently, years of business travel, making it automatic. Clothes, toiletries, laptop, charger, the essentials. Sarah stood in the doorway the whole time, crying now. Her perfect makeup running in a way that would have upset her if she'd been thinking clearly. I love you, she said as I zipped the bag. I know I'm not good at showing it, but I do love you, Marcus. Please don't go. I looked at her, really looked at her, this woman I'd married 7 years ago who'd seemed so perfect, so refined, so everything I'd thought I wanted. She was beautiful, even crying. That hadn't changed. Her family's money was still old and established. Her connections still valid, her social position still enviable. But none of that was what I'd thought I was marrying. I'd thought I was marrying a partner. Someone who'd be interested in building a life together, in celebrating successes together, in knowing each other deeply and completely. Instead, I'd married someone who thought of me as a supporting character in her family's story. I love you too, I said, and meant it, because feelings don't evaporate just because you wish they would. But I'm starting to think that's not enough. I left her crying in the bedroom, took my bag downstairs, paused only to grab my laptop from the office. My car was still in the driveway, cool night air washing over me as I loaded my bag, started the engine, pulled out onto the street without looking back. I drove to the Meridian Grand, because of course I did. I had an owner's suite there, a penthouse on the 12th floor that I kept for exactly these situations. Late nights working, early morning meetings, the occasional need to be somewhere that was mine and only mine. The night manager raised an eyebrow when I came in with a suitcase but said nothing. Discretion was part of what I paid him for. The suite was quiet, dark. I turned on one lamp, stood at the window looking out over the city. My city, I'd always thought of it. The place I'd built a name and a business and a life that apparently no one in my actual life cared about. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. I'm sorry. Please let me fix this. And then, minutes later, I told Daddy about the hotel, about you owning it. He wants to talk to you. I stared at that second message for a long time, trying to parse what it meant. She'd told him. Finally, after I'd left, after the fight, she'd actually mentioned to her father that his son-in-law owned the venue he'd booked for his daughter's engagement party. I wondered what he'd said. I wondered if he'd been surprised, impressed, or just annoyed that I'd never mentioned it. I wondered if it would change anything at all. Tell him I'll call him tomorrow, I sent back. Tonight I need space. I didn't sleep much. I lay in the suite's king-size bed, 1,000 thread count sheets, pillow menu, the works, and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the invitation that had started all of this, about Sarah's father charging me to use my own property, about 7 years of marriage to someone who'd never bothered to learn what I did for a living, about the engagement party in 2 weeks, where I'd be expected to show up, smile, write speeches about family, and pretend I didn't notice that I was invisible. Unless. The thought came slowly, taking shape in the darkness like something developing in a chemical bath. Unless I stopped pretending. Unless I let them see exactly who they'd been ignoring in all these years. Unless I used their assumptions against them, let them show me exactly how they treated people they thought were beneath them. And then, only then, revealed the truth. It was petty, it was childish, it was absolutely something Sarah would call working class. I smiled in the darkness and started making plans. Gregory Harrison called at 9:15 the next morning. I was in my office at the Meridian Grand, having spent the early hours reviewing contracts and responding to emails, trying to lose myself in work the way I always did when personal life got complicated. Denise had brought me coffee without comment. Her presence, a quiet solidarity that I appreciated more than I could say. I'd seen his name on my phone screen 3 times before I answered. Let him wait. Let him wonder. Let him feel the small discomfort of not getting immediate attention. Petty? Yes. Satisfying? Also yes. Gregory, I said when I finally picked up, my tone pleasant, neutral. Good morning. Marcus. He sounded off. Not quite apologetic, but uncertain in a way I'd never heard from him before. Gregory Harrison was a man who navigated the world with absolute confidence in his place within it. Hearing that confidence waver was like watching someone discover gravity might be optional. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. I'm at work. A pause. I could almost hear him recalculating, trying to figure out how this conversation was supposed to go now that the parameters had shifted. Yes, well, Sarah mentioned to me last night that you own the Meridian Grand. I do. I wish I'd known that before we booked it. Do you? Another pause, longer this time. Of course, I wouldn't have. That is, we could have discussed it differently. As family. Discussed it how exactly? I kept my tone mild, genuinely curious. This was the dance, I realized. He was trying to figure out if I was offended, if I expected something from him, if the power dynamic had shifted in some way that required acknowledgement. Well, I certainly wouldn't have charged you the full venue fee. Family discount, naturally. We could have worked something out that was more appropriate. By charging me less to use my own building? The silence on the other end was profound. He seemed to be struggling. I'm not sure I understand what you're getting at, Marcus. I'm not getting at anything. I'm asking a genuine question. You said we could have worked something out that was more appropriate. I'm trying to understand what that means. Would you have asked me to donate the venue, give it to you for free as a wedding gift, or just charge me a discounted rate to rent my own property? Now, Marcus, because from where I'm sitting, Gregory, what would have been appropriate is asking me first, not about the money, but about the venue. Marcus, you own the Meridian Grand. Would you be willing to host Melissa's engagement party there? That would have been appropriate. That would have treated me like family instead of like a bank. His voice hardened. I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate being charged $43,000 to use a building I own without anyone even bothering to check whether I'd be willing to just host the event. But here we are. Sarah said you were upset about this. Did she explain why? She said something about us not knowing enough about your business, which, frankly, Marcus, isn't entirely fair. You're not exactly forthcoming about these things. I laughed, couldn't help it. Gregory, I've tried to tell you about my work dozens of times. At family dinners, at holidays, at every event you've invited me to. You've never once asked a follow-up question. You've never shown the slightest interest in what I do beyond whether I can afford to fund whatever your family needs at the moment. That is absolutely not true. Isn't it? Tell me what my company is called. Silence. Tell me how many properties I own. More silence. Tell me anything, Gregory, anything at all about what I do, who I am, what I've built, beyond something with property management. Well, you work in real estate, property development. You've mentioned that. Have I? When? I don't keep a catalog of our conversations, Marcus. Neither do I. But I remember every time you've asked me about my work. Want to know how many times that is, Vima? I paused. 0. In 7 years of being married to your daughter, of spending holidays with your family, of writing checks to fund your lifestyle, you have never once asked me a question about my business. Not one. If you'd wanted me to know, you could have told me. I tried, you weren't interested. And that's fine, Gregory. You don't have to be interested in your son-in-law's career. But what you don't get to do is act like I was hiding it from you when you never bothered to look. I could hear him breathing, could almost see him in my mind's eye, standing in his study at Willowcrest, surrounded by the leather-bound books he'd never read and the expensive art he'd bought because consultants told him it was tasteful, trying to figure out how this conversation had gotten away from him. I think, he said carefully, that we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I called to apologize for the misunderstanding about the venue. I'd like to make things right. How? Well, I'll need to discuss it with Patricia, of course, but perhaps we could work out a more suitable arrangement. Family helping family, that sort of thing. You want to renegotiate. I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with how this is being handled. This is Melissa's engagement party, Marcus. It's important to our family. I'm sure you want it to be special too. There it was, the pivot, The implication that if I was a good son-in-law, a good family member, I'd fall in line and make this easy for everyone. That my discomfort was less important than maintaining the fiction that everything was fine. I do want it to be special, I said quietly. Melissa deserves a beautiful party, and she'll get one. The Meridian Grand provides excellent service to all our clients. Our clients? Yes, you contracted with the hotel for an event. You're a client. We'll provide exactly what you paid for, with the same level of service we give everyone. Marcus, surely, unless you'd like to upgrade to one of our premium packages. My events manager mentioned you'd requested some additional services, top shelf bar, extended hours, rooftop access. We can absolutely accommodate that, but it would require an adjusted contract and additional payment. You're going to charge me? Gregory, you hired my hotel for an event. Yes, I'm going to charge you. That's how hotels work. But you own it, which is exactly why I'm not going to give you special treatment, because it would be inappropriate to undervalue my own business, to shortchange my staff and my bottom line just because you're family. That wouldn't be fair to anyone. This is ridiculous. His voice had shifted fully now, the uncertain tone replaced by irritation. You're being petty over what exactly? Because we didn't know you owned some hotel? Because we didn't ask enough questions about your little property business? My little property business. I closed my eyes, took a breath, reminded myself that losing my temper wouldn't accomplish anything useful. I'm being professional, I said evenly. You're a client. You booked a venue, you assigned a contract, and now you're requesting changes to that contract. As with any client, those changes will be itemized, priced, and require your approval. If you'd prefer to cancel and find a different venue, that's also an option, though our cancellation policy would apply. You'd actually charge me a cancellation fee for my daughter's engagement party? Gregory, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to really think about it before you answer. I leaned back in my chair, watched the morning sun stream through my office window. If I wasn't your son-in-law, if I was just the owner of this hotel and you'd booked it for an event and then tried to demand extra services for free, what would you expect me to say? He didn't answer. You'd expect me to point you to the contract and explain that changes cost money. You'd expect me to be professional, consistent, fair to all my clients. You might not like it, but you'd respect it, because that's how business works. I paused. The only difference here is that you think being family should mean I roll over and give you whatever you want. But that's not respect, Gregory. That's just exploitation with better manners. How dare you? No, I dare because I'm tired. I'm tired of funding your family's lifestyle. I'm tired of being treated like staff. I'm tired of writing checks and getting nothing back except the privilege of being tolerated at your dinner table. My voice stayed calm, but I felt something loosening in my chest, some pressure valve finally releasing. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have my events team send you an itemized quote for the upgraded services you've requested. You're going to review that quote and decide whether you want to pay for the upgrades or stick with your original contract. Either way, the event will happen and it will be beautiful, because that's what we do. And if I refuse, then you get exactly what you paid for. Premium bar package, 5-hour event, standard services, which by the way is still an excellent party. We don't do mediocre at the Meridian Grand. You're really going to do this. You're going to charge your own family full price. Above full price, actually, for the upgrades, because they weren't in the original contract. I could hear him breathing hard now, anger or frustration or some cocktail of emotions he wasn't used to having to manage. Gregory Harrison was a man accustomed to being accommodated, to his name and his reputation smoothing paths in front of him. The idea that his son-in-law wouldn't simply defer to him seemed to be breaking something in his worldview. Fine, he bit out. Send me your quote. I'll review it and get back to you. Great, Denise, that's my general manager, will have it to you by end of day. And Marcus, his voice had gone cold, when you come to Sunday dinner tomorrow, I think we need to have a family conversation about boundaries and respect. Actually, I won't be there tomorrow. Excuse me? I'm taking some time. From the family dinners, from the constant obligations, from all of it. Sarah and I are working through some things, and I need space to think clearly. You're punishing us because we didn't know you owned a hotel? That's remarkably childish, Marcus. I'm protecting myself, Gregory. There's a difference. I stood, looked out at my hotel, at this building I'd rescued and restored and turned into something worth being proud of. For 7 years, I've been part of your family. I've attended every dinner, every holiday, every event. I've written checks without complaint, have listened to your opinions without argument, have done everything I could to be someone you'd be proud to call son-in-law. And in all that time, not one of you has bothered to learn who I actually am. That's not childish to notice, Gregory. That's just sad. I hung up before he could respond, set the phone on my desk, and let the silence settle around me. Denise appeared in my doorway moments later. I'm assuming that went well? Fine, well. You're smiling. Am I? I touched my face, surprised to find she was right. I guess I am. He's going to make trouble, you know. I don't know. Men like Gregory Harrison don't handle being told no gracefully. Let him make trouble. What's he going to do? Call me names at Sunday dinner I'm not attending? She settled into the chair across from my desk, studying me with that sharp attention that made her so good at her job. You're burning bridges. Maybe, or maybe I'm just finally seeing which bridges were worth saving in the first place. And Sarah? The smile faded. I don't know. She called 4 times last night, left voicemails, apologizing, explaining, asking me to come home. I haven't called her back yet. Do you want to? Did I? That was the question, wasn't it? Because part of me still loved my wife, still remembered the woman I'd married, still hoped that maybe this could be fixed. But another part, a growing part, wondered if there was anything to fix, if the foundation had ever been solid, or if I'd just been too invested in the idea of who I thought she was to see who she actually was. I want her to understand, I said finally. I want her to see me, actually see me, not as her husband or her father's son-in-law or the person who pays for things. Just me, Marcus Thornhill, who built something from nothing and is proud of it, who wants a partner, not a dependent, who deserves basic respect and interest from the person he married. That's a lot to want, is it? Seems pretty basic to me. Basic and achievable are 2 different things. She stood, moved to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's about time someone called them on their bullshit. Eloquently put. I'm a general manager, not a poet. She grinned. I'll get that revised quote to Gregory by 3. Want to review it first? Absolutely. Make sure every upgrade is clearly itemized with full pricing transparency. I want him to see exactly what he's asking for and what it costs. You're enjoying this. A little, I admitted. Is that wrong? Probably, but sometimes the wrong thing feels right for a reason. After she left, I opened my laptop, pulled up the contract Gregory had signed, and read through it carefully. Every clause, every specification, every detail of what he'd agreed to pay for. It was all there, documented, legal, binding. He'd signed it. He'd paid the deposit. And now he was learning that family didn't mean I'd allow myself to be used. My phone buzzed. Sarah, please call me. We need to talk. I stared at the message, at those 5 words that somehow carried 7 years of marriage and all the complications that came with it. Tonight, I sent back. After work. I'll come by the house. Thank you, she replied immediately. And then, I love you. I know, I sent because saying it back felt like a promise I wasn't ready to make yet. The rest of the day passed in the usual rhythm of running a hotel, guest issues to resolve, staff meetings to attend, decisions to make about everything from menu changes to maintenance schedules. Normal life, the kind of work I was good at, the kind that made sense because it followed rules and logic and clear chains of cause and effect. Unlike marriage, unlike family, unlike the complicated web of obligation and expectation and disappointment I'd somehow gotten tangled in. Denise delivered the revised quote at 2:30, beautifully formatted document that laid out every upgrade Gregory had requested with clinical precision. Ultra premium bar package at $8,000. Extended event time, $2,500. Exclusive rooftop access, $3,500. Plus service charges, gratuity, and tax. Total additional cost, $16,147. I approved it with a signature and an email back to Denise. Send it. CC me on the email. She did, and I watched the email go through. Imagined Gregory opening it in his study, his face as he read through the line items, the total at the bottom that was probably more than he'd expected, but less than he'd spend if he canceled and tried to book somewhere else on short notice. He'd pay. I knew he would. Men like Gregory Harrison didn't cancel their daughters' engagement parties over money, not when that money was technically available, not when canceling would mean admitting defeat, but he'd resent me, which was fine because I'd been resenting him for years. At least now we'd be even. I went home at 7. Our house, my house, I'd started thinking of it, sat in its perfect neighborhood like a postcard of success. Manicured lawn, elegant facade, the kind of curb appeal that made you think the people inside must have everything figured out. Sarah's car was in the driveway, lights on in the living room, everything looking normal and domestic and fine. Except nothing was fine, and we both knew it. She opened the door before I could use my key, must have been watching for me. She dressed carefully, not overdressed. That would seem like trying too hard, but nice. Her favorite jeans, the cashmere sweater I'd bought her for Christmas last year. Hair down, makeup subtle, the kind of presentation that said, "I'm comfortable, but I care." "Hi," she said softly. "Hi." We stood in our own doorway like strangers figuring out how greeting worked. Finally, she stepped back, let me in, closed the door behind me with a soft click that sounded too loud in the silence. The house smelled like her perfume and the candles she liked to burn and something cooking. Comfort food probably, her standard move when she wanted to fix things. I could smell garlic, tomato, basil, pasta again, or maybe chicken parmesan. Something that would remind me of good dinners, good times, good reasons to stay. "I made dinner," she confirmed. "If you're hungry." "Maybe later." She nodded, twisted her hands together, untwisted them. "Can we sit? Talk?" We settled in the living room, her on the couch, me in the armchair across from it. Creating distance, I noticed. Both of us subconsciously choosing positions that didn't assume intimacy. "My father called you," she said. "He did. He said you were difficult." "I'm sure he did. Were you?" She looked at me, genuinely curious. "Difficult?" I was honest. "If that's difficult, then yes." She flinched. "He's upset, Marcus. They all are. My mother's been calling all day, asking what happened. Why you're refusing to help with Melissa's party?" "I'm not refusing to help. I'm refusing to be used. There's a difference." "That's what he said you'd say." She pulled a throw pillow onto her lap, held it like armor. "He thinks you're being petty, that you're holding a grudge over something trivial. What do you think?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. I don't know. Part of me understands why you're upset, but part of me thinks you're making this bigger than it needs to be." "Which part is winning?" "Marcus, no, I'm serious." "Which part, Sarah?" "The part that understands why I'm hurt, that your family has been using me for years without even bothering to learn my name? Or the part that thinks I should shut up and keep writing checks because that's what good family members do?" It's not that simple. It kind of is, though. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, trying to read her face. "Look, I get that this is complicated for you. They're your family. You love them. You want everyone to get along. But they don't love me, Sarah. They don't even like me. They tolerate me because I'm useful. And you've been okay with that for 7 years. That's not true. They do care about you. Name one time, one single time your father has asked me about my work, my interests, my life. One time your mother has had a conversation with me that wasn't about what I could do for the family. One time any of them have treated me like a person instead of a resource." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the pillow in her lap. They're not good at showing affection. You know that. They're private people, reserved, It's how they were raised. I'm not asking for affection. I'm asking for basic human decency, for recognition that I exist beyond my utility. I sat back, suddenly exhausted. Do you know what your father said to me today? He called my business your little property business, like it was a hobby, like $18 million in assets was something cute I did in my spare time. Her eyes widened. 18 million? You didn't know that either. I, you said the number last night, but I thought you were exaggerating and to make a point. Why would I exaggerate? Because you were angry? I stared at her, trying to process this. Sarah, why would I lie about my own company's value? Why would I make up numbers to win an argument about you not knowing anything about my work? I don't know. People do weird things when they're fighting. Jesus, I rubbed my face. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You know so little about my life, about who I am and what I do, that you literally cannot tell the difference between reality and exaggeration. That's not a communication problem, Sarah. That's a fundamental disconnect in our relationship. Then help me fix it. She leaned forward, earnest now. Tell me about your work. Explain it all to me. I'll listen, I promise. I want to understand. Do you? Or do you want to placate me so things can go back to normal? Both, she said, and at least that was honest. I want you to be happy, Marcus, and I want things to be okay again. Can't those be the same thing? I don't know, can they? We sat in silence for a while. The candles burned, the house settled around us. The normal evening sounds of our neighborhood filtered in through the windows. Dogs barking, cars passing, someone laughing in a backyard party we couldn't see. Tell me about the hotel, Sarah said finally. About how you bought it, what you did with it. I want to know. So I told her. I told her about finding the Meridian Grand in foreclosure, seeing past the dated fixtures, and struggling reputation to the bones of something beautiful. I told her about the auction, about going 11 million when everyone else stopped at 8, about the looks from the other bidders like I was crazy. I told her about the renovations, the careful restoration, the balance between historical integrity and modern comfort. I told her about opening night, about how I'd stood in the lobby and watched people arrive for that first event and felt like I might throw up from nervousness, about how successful it had been, how word had spread, how we'd gone from empty calendar to booked solid in 18 months. I told her about buying the other properties, about diversifying the portfolio, about learning the business from the ground up because no one had taught me and I'd had to figure it out myself, about the staff I'd hired, the standards I'd set, the reputation we'd built. I told her things I'd tried to tell her before. But this time she listened, actually listened, asked questions, wanted details. And part of me felt hopeful, like maybe this was the turning point, the moment where we'd break through to understanding. But another part of me wondered why it had taken a crisis to get her to pay attention. That's incredible, she said when I finished. Marcus, that's really incredible. I had no idea you'd built something so impressive. I tried to tell you. I know. I'm sorry I didn't listen. I got caught up in, she waved vaguely, everything else. My family, my life, my problems. I forgot to make room for yours. For 7 years. Yes, she met my eyes. For 7 years, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What are you sorry for specifically? The question seemed to confuse her. What? I need to know you understand what the problem actually is. Not just I'm sorry because that's what you're supposed to say, but what specifically you're apologizing for. She thought about it, and I could see her processing, trying to articulate something she'd never had to put into words before. I'm sorry for not paying attention to your work, for not asking questions or showing interest when you tried to share it with me, for letting my family treat you like you were less important than them, for not standing up for you when I should have. She paused, and for not seeing how much it was hurting you until you had to leave. Okay, I said quietly, that's a start. Just a start? Sarah, you've apologized, and I believe you mean it, but I need to know that things are actually going to change. That this isn't just damage control because I left for one night. What do you want me to do? Tell me and I'll do it. I want you to tell your father he was wrong. She blinked. What? Your father, Gregory. I want you to call him and tell him that he was wrong to charge me for the venue, wrong to demand special treatment, wrong in how he's treated me for the last 7 years. I want you to stand up for me to your family instead of always expecting me to accommodate them. Marcus, I can't or won't. It's not that simple. He's my father. You don't just tell him that he's wrong about things. Why not? Because that's not how our family works. We don't confront each other directly. We handle things with subtlety, with diplomacy, with me eating shit over and over while pretending to be grateful for it. She flinched. That's crude, but accurate. She clutched the pillow tighter. You're asking me to choose between you and my family. No, I'm asking you to include me in your family, to treat me like I matter as much as they do. That's not choosing, Sarah. That's just being married. But if I confront my father about this, he'll be furious. My mother will be upset. Melissa's party will be ruined because everyone will be fighting. Then maybe the party should be ruined. Maybe that's the consequence of treating people badly for years. I stood, needed to move, to pace off some of the energy building in my chest. Do you understand what you're saying right now? You're telling me that your family's comfort is more important than my dignity. That avoiding conflict with them matters more than standing up for your husband. I'm not saying that. You literally just said it. You said you can't tell your father he's wrong because it would make everyone uncomfortable. You're more worried about their feelings than mine. That's not fair, isn't it? I stopped pacing, looked at her. Sarah, if the situation was reversed, if my parents had been using you for money, treating you like you were less than them, and I refused to say anything because it might cause family drama, what would you do? That's different. How? Your parents they're different people. They don't have the same expectations. My parents are working class people who would never dream of taking money from someone without acknowledging it, let alone charging their own son-in-law to use his own property. That's not about class, Sarah. That's about basic decency. You're twisting everything I say. I'm just listening to what you're actually saying and instead of what you think you're saying. I returned to the chair, suddenly too tired to keep standing. Look, I don't want to fight. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to see if we could fix this. But fixing it requires both of us to change, and I'm not seeing a lot of evidence that you're willing to do your part. I am willing. I told you I was sorry, and I want more than sorry. I want action. I want you to set boundaries with your family. I want you to tell them that I'm not their ATM anymore, that if they want my help, they need to ask respectfully and accept gracefully when I say no. I want you to tell your father that he was wrong about the hotel and that he needs to apologize to me directly. And most of all, I want you to mean it, not just to say the words to make me happy, but to actually believe that I deserve better than how I've been treated. She was crying now, mascara running despite her careful application. You're asking me to destroy my relationship with my family. I'm asking you to have a healthy one. If setting basic boundaries destroys it, then it wasn't healthy to begin with. That's easy for you to say. Your family is normal. My family is middle class. That's not the same as normal. They have their own issues, their own dynamics, but at least they treat their in-laws like human beings. So this is about class after all. No, this is about respect, which, if you haven't noticed, transcends class boundaries. We lapsed into silence again, but this time it felt heavier, more final, like something was settling between us, hardening into a shape that couldn't be easily reshaped. The party is in 2 weeks, Sarah said finally, her voice small. Melissa is so excited. Christopher's family is flying in. Everyone's looking forward to it. And it will be beautiful. I meant what I said. The Meridian Grand provides excellent service. But you're not going to come, are you? The question hung there. I'd been avoiding thinking about it, about whether I'd actually attend this party or not. Part of me wanted to go, to see Melissa happy, to support my sister-in-law on her special day. But another part, a larger part, couldn't imagine standing in my own hotel, watching Sarah's family celebrate using my money and my property, being treated like I was nobody special. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me again in 2 weeks. Marcus, no, I need time, Sarah. Time to think. Time to figure out what I want my life to look like. Time to decide if this marriage is something worth fighting for. I stood again, moved toward the door. I'm going to stay at the hotel for a while longer. You can call me, text me, whatever you need. But I'm not coming back here until I've figured some things out. What things? Whether I can spend the rest of my life being invisible to the person I married. Whether I'm willing to keep funding a family that doesn't respect me. Whether love is enough when it's not accompanied by basic human decency. I pulled out my keys, felt their weight in my hand. Big things, Sarah. The kind of things you can't rush. I love you, she said desperately. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for a lot, but it's not enough by itself. Love without respect it's just need. And I'm tired of being needed without being valued. I left her crying on the couch, let myself out, drove back to the Meridian Grand through streets that blurred slightly because my own eyes were damp. Not crying exactly, just leaking. The way pressure leaks from a sealed container when you finally crack it open. Denise was still in her office when I got back, even though it was past 10. She looked up when I passed her door, took in whatever she saw on my face and just nodded. That kind of conversation, she asked? That kind of conversation. Need to talk about it? Not yet, maybe tomorrow. I'll make sure your suite is stocked with the good scotch. You're the best, Denise. I know. That's why you pay me so much. I smiled despite everything and went upstairs to my suite, to the expensive sheets and the good scotch, and the silence that was starting to feel more like peace than loneliness. Tomorrow I'd deal with Gregory's response to the quote. Tomorrow I'd decide what to do about the party, about Sarah, about the mess my marriage had become. Tonight I just wanted to sit in my own building, in this space I'd created, and remember who I was when no one was demanding that I be someone else. Gregory Harrison accepted the quote. The email came through at 8:47 a.m. the next morning, terse and professional and absolutely dripping with resentment, even through the clinical language of business correspondence. The Harrison family accepts the revised proposal as outlined. Please proceed with the upgraded services as specified. Payment will be rendered according to the contract terms. Regards, Gregory Harrison. Not thank you, not we appreciate your flexibility, not even looking forward to the event. Just the bare minimum acknowledgement that he was grudgingly paying for services he'd demanded. Denise appeared in my office doorway minutes after I'd read it, holding her own phone with the same email on the screen. He's pissed, she said cheerfully. Extremely. Good, he should be. Maybe it'll teach him something about asking nicely. People like Gregory Harrison don't learn lessons. They just find new ways to blame other people for their problems. Cynical this morning, aren't we? I shrugged. Realistic. He's going to make this difficult, somehow. You watch. I was right. Over the next 10 days, as Melissa's engagement party approached, Gregory Harrison found every possible way to be difficult without technically violating the contract. He questioned every detail, demanded meetings about minutiae, insisted on multiple tastings and walkthroughs, and consultations that were absolutely not standard for an event of this size. And he never once communicated directly with me. Everything went through Denise, through Thomas, through the event staff, purchase orders signed by Gregory, emails from his assistant, phone calls that carefully avoided any acknowledgement that he knew I existed. It was a passive-aggressive masterclass, a way of punishing me by pretending I didn't matter. The irony that he was ignoring the owner of the hotel while demanding constant attention from the staff was apparently lost on him. Sarah called every day, sometimes multiple times. I answered about half the calls, let the others go to voicemail, listened to her messages that ranged from apologetic to confused to increasingly frustrated that I wasn't just getting over this already. Melissa keeps asking if you're coming, she said on day 5. What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her the truth, that I don't know yet. That's not an answer, Marcus. It's the only one I have. On day 7, my mother wants to know if you're angry with the family. She thinks she's done something to offend you. Tell her she hasn't done anything. That's kind of the problem. What does that mean? Exactly what it sounds like. On day 9, you're being childish. This is Melissa's engagement party. Can't you put aside whatever personal issues you have for one night and just show up for family? That one I didn't answer. Just listened to the voicemail twice, trying to figure out if she genuinely didn't understand or if she just didn't want to. The party was scheduled for Saturday evening. By Friday morning, I still hadn't decided if I was going. I'd gone over it in my head 1,000 times, weighing the options. If I went, I'd have to watch Sarah's family pretend nothing was wrong, would have to smile and make small talk, and probably listen to some speech about family and togetherness from Gregory while he avoided making eye contact with me. Would have to stand in my own hotel and be invisible. But if I didn't go, I'd miss seeing Melissa happy. Would confirm everything Sarah's family probably thought about me, that I was difficult, petty, not really one of them. Would hurt Sarah, who despite everything, I still cared about. There was no good option. Just two different versions of bad. "You're overthinking this," Denise said, finding me in my office Friday afternoon staring at nothing in particular. "It's a party, you go, you smile, you leave. Not that complicated. It's my wife's sister's engagement party in my hotel that her father tried to charge me for, after 7 years of them treating me like staff. And you think that's not complicated?" "Okay, when you put it that way. Yeah. But still, you're the owner. It's your building. Why give them the satisfaction of driving you away from your own property?" I looked at her. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that if you're going to do this, if you're going to show up and endure the whole nightmare, you might as well make it interesting." "Define interesting." She smiled, slow and wicked. "Well, Gregory Harrison has been very careful to avoid acknowledging your existence all week. Very careful to treat you like you don't matter. Maybe it's time to remind him exactly who he's dealing with." "I'm listening." "The owner of the Meridian Grand traditionally welcomes major events with a brief greeting, usually in the ballroom right after guests arrive, but before formal activities begin. A minute or two, just thanking them for choosing the venue, ensuring everything is perfect. That kind of thing. I've never done that, because we've never needed to. Our reputation speaks for itself, but it's absolutely within protocol, especially for a family event. You want me to introduce myself as the owner in front of everyone. I want you to be visible, to stand in your own building, in front of your wife's family and all their high society friends, and make it very clear who you are. Not Sarah's husband, not the guy who writes checks, the man who owns the place they're celebrating in." I thought about it, about walking into that ballroom, taking the microphone, introducing myself as the owner of the Meridian Grand, about the look on Gregory's face, on Patricia's face, on all those people who treated me like I was nobody special. "That's petty," I said. "Extremely. It'll cause a scene. Almost certainly. Sarah will be furious." "Probably," I smiled. "I love it. I thought you might." We spent the rest of Friday planning, not the party itself, that was already planned, every detail confirmed, the kind of event the Meridian Grand could execute in its sleep. But my part in it, the timing, the wording, the presentation that would make it clear I wasn't trying to steal attention or cause drama, just participating as the venue owner typically would. Professional, appropriate, devastating. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, sunny but not too hot, the kind of day that made outdoor photos look effortless. I watched from my office as the events team transformed the ballroom, as flowers arrived and tables were set, and the whole elaborate dance of preparation unfolded, with the precision we'd become known for. Melissa arrived at 4 for photos, radiant in a cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her fiancé Christopher beside her looking appropriately dashing. They were sweet together, I give them that, young and excited and completely unaware of the family drama swirling around their celebration. Sarah arrived at 5. I watched her from my window, stepping out of her car with the careful grace she'd perfected, checking her reflection in the side mirror, smoothing her dress, a dress I'd paid for from a designer whose name I couldn't pronounce, beautiful and expensive, and everything she thought she needed to look the part. She didn't look up, didn't glance at the upper floors where she might have guessed I was watching. Just walked in with the confidence of someone who belonged, who'd never questioned her right to be there. I wondered if she ever would. Guests started arriving at 6. I recognized many of them, Sarah's cousins, family friends, colleagues of Gregory's from various boards and committees. The kind of people who dressed well and spoke smoothly and knew all the right names to drop in conversation. Old money, or at least old money adjacent, the social circle Sarah had been born into and that I'd never quite managed to feel comfortable in. Gregory and Patricia arrived fashionably late at 6:15. He wore a tuxedo even though the invitation had said cocktail attire, because of course he did, making a statement, establishing hierarchy. Patricia floated beside him in something designer and neutral, her hair perfect, her jewelry understated in that way that only extremely expensive jewelry can be. They greeted people like royalty accepting peasants, all gracious smiles and meaningful handshakes. I watched Gregory scan the crowd, probably looking for me, his expression shifting to satisfaction when he didn't immediately spot me. Good. Let him think I'd stayed away. Let him think he'd won. By 6:30, the ballroom was full. 200 people milling about with cocktails, the sound of laughter and conversation filling the space with that particular energy that good parties have. The lighting was perfect, the music at the right volume, everything flowing smoothly because my staff was excellent at their jobs. I dressed carefully. Not a tux, that would be trying too hard competing with Gregory. But my best suit, dark charcoal, perfectly tailored, with a tie Sarah had given me for our anniversary 2 years ago. Looking successful without looking flashy, professional, appropriate. I stood in the service corridor, watching through the small window as Thomas moved through the crowd, eventually making his way to the small stage where the band had set up. He'd coordinated this with me earlier, a brief pause in the cocktail hour, a moment to welcome guests and introduce the happy couple before dinner was served. Thomas tapped the microphone twice, waited for the crowd to settle. Good evening, everyone. If I could have your attention for just a moment. His voice carried across the ballroom, professionally trained, perfect diction. On behalf of the Meridian Grand, we'd like to welcome you to this beautiful celebration of Melissa and Christopher's engagement. Polite applause. Melissa beamed. Christopher raised his glass. Everything was going according to plan. Their plan, the party they'd envisioned, the celebration of love and future, and all the things young couples get excited about. As is our tradition for family events, Thomas continued, and I felt my heart rate pick up. The owner of the Meridian Grand likes to personally welcome our guests and ensure everything is perfect for your celebration. Please join me in welcoming Marcus Thornhill. I walked out of the service corridor into the ballroom. The room didn't go silent. That would be too dramatic, too much like a movie. But the volume dropped noticeably as people turned to look, as I crossed the floor to the stage, as recognition rippled through the crowd in waves. I saw Sarah's face first. Shock, absolute shock, her mouth actually falling open slightly. She'd known I owned the hotel. I'd told her, we'd talked about it, she'd apologized for not knowing. But I don't think she'd ever fully processed what that meant. That when she walked into the Meridian Grand, she was walking into my building, my business, my domain. Gregory's expression was better. He'd gone very still, a champagne flute frozen halfway to his mouth, his eyes locked on me with an intensity that would have been intimidating if I'd let it be. But I'd spent 7 years being intimidated by Gregory Harrison, and I was done with that. I took the microphone from Thomas with a nod of thanks, looked out over the crowd, over Sarah's family and friends, over the people who'd treated me like staff for years, and smiled. Good evening. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Marcus Thornhill. I own the Meridian Grand, and it's my genuine pleasure to host this celebration tonight. The silence was thick now, uncomfortable, the kind of quiet that happens when people realize they're missing context and need to recalibrate. I kept smiling. The Meridian Grand has a special place in my heart, I continued, my voice steady, conversational. Like I was just making small talk instead of detonating a bomb in the middle of my wife's family's party. I bought this building 3 years ago. Many of you probably remember when it was struggling, when it was considered outdated, past its prime. I saw something different. I saw history, craftsmanship, bones that were worth saving. I paused, let that land, saw Gregory's jaw tighten. Over the past 3 years, we've worked hard to restore the Meridian Grand to its former glory, to make it the kind of place where people want to celebrate their most important moments. Weddings, anniversaries, engagements. I gestured to Melissa and Christopher, who were both looking confused but pleased. The occasions that matter. Polite applause, though it sounded tentative, uncertain. So when my sister-in-law Melissa told me she'd always dreamed of having her engagement party here, that she used to drive past this building as a child just to look at the chandeliers through the windows, I was honored, genuinely honored that something I'd built could be part of such a special celebration. More applause, warmer now. Melissa was definitely crying, those happy tears that young women cry when something touches them. Christopher had his arm around her, looking at me with newfound respect. Of course, I said, and my tone shifted just slightly, just enough to make people pay closer attention. I didn't initially know that this was her dream venue, because my father-in-law made the booking through my events manager without mentioning the family connection. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. In fact, I continued, still smiling, still pleasant. He paid full price for the venue rental, which, and I think this is delightfully ironic, means that I technically charge myself to host this party at my own building. Scattered nervous laughter. People weren't sure if this was funny or uncomfortable, whether I was joking or making a point. But that's fine, I said quickly, before the tension could fully crystallize. That's what happens when families don't communicate clearly. When we make assumptions instead of asking questions. When we think we know who people are instead of actually learning about them. I found Gregory in the crowd, held his gaze. My father-in-law is an impressive man. Everyone here knows that. His reputation in this city, his connections, his standing in the community, these things matter. They open doors. They create opportunities. They command respect. His face was stone now, unreadable. But here's what I've learned over the past 7 years of being part of this family. Reputation and reality aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the person everyone respects hasn't earned that respect. Sometimes the person everyone ignores is the one actually doing the work. The silence was profound now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving, frozen in place like everyone else. I don't say this to cause drama, I continued, and I meant it. This wasn't about drama. This was about truth. I say it because I think Melissa and Christopher deserve better than to start their marriage based on the same assumptions, the same patterns of who matters and who doesn't. They deserve to see each other clearly, to value each other honestly, to build something based on truth instead of appearances. I looked at the happy couple, softened my voice. Melissa, you've been a wonderful sister-in-law. You've always been kind to me, always treated me with warmth, even when I'm sure you heard your parents expressing, I paused, chose my words carefully, reservations about their daughter's choice in husband. That meant something to me, still does. She was definitely crying now, and Christopher was looking between me and his future in-laws with dawning understanding. So this party, this celebration in this beautiful building, it's my gift to you. Not because I was asked and not because I was paid, but because I want to. Because you deserve to celebrate your love in a place that means something, with people who care about you. I let that sit for a moment, then turned back to the room at large. But for everyone else here tonight, let me be very clear about something. I'm not the guy who writes checks. I'm not the quiet husband who stays in the background. I'm not the middle management paper pusher that some of you have assumed I am. I'm a successful businessman who built something from nothing. I employ people, I create value, I make decisions that affect lives and livelihoods. My voice hardened slightly, and I will no longer accept being treated as less than I am, by anyone. I could see Sarah now, clearly, at the edge of the crowd. She looked devastated, tears streaming down her face, her hand over her mouth. Part of me wanted to go to her, to comfort her, to soften this moment, but another part, the part that had been ignored and dismissed and undervalued for 7 years, held firm. I didn't come here tonight to ruin anyone's celebration, I said. pulling back, finding the pleasant tone again. I came here because this is my building, and my sister-in-law is getting engaged, and those are both things worth showing up for. So please enjoy this beautiful party. Enjoy the food, the music, the company. Toast Melissa and Christopher. Celebrate their future. Make this a night they'll remember. I handed the microphone back to Thomas, started to leave the stage, then paused. Oh, and one more thing, I said, turning back. The upgraded premium bar that was requested, the extended hours, the rooftop access, all the additions to the original contract, those are on the house. Consider it a genuine wedding gift from someone who actually knows what family means. The applause that followed was confused, uncertain, but genuine. People didn't quite know what they just witnessed, but they recognized something significant had happened. I left the stage, walked through the crowd that parted for me now like I was someone who mattered, and headed straight for the exit. Not running, not fleeing, just leaving because I'd said what I needed to say, and staying longer would only complicate things. Marcus, Sarah's voice behind me. I stopped but didn't turn around. What the hell was that? She hissed, keeping her voice low enough that only I could hear. What were you thinking? I was thinking that I've been invisible for long enough. You just humiliated my father in front of everyone he knows. I turned then, looked at her properly. She was beautiful, even crying, even furious. But for the first time in 7 years, that beauty didn't make me want to compromise, to smooth things over, to make her life easier at the expense of my own dignity. I didn't humiliate him, Sarah. I just told the truth. If he feels humiliated, that's his conscience working, not my fault. You can't do this. We had an agreement. You fund things, I handle family relationships. That's how we work. That was how we worked. Past tense. I don't want that agreement anymore. So what? You're just going to blow up our entire life because your feelings are hurt? My feelings aren't hurt, Sarah. My eyes are open. There's a difference. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. Did you hear what I said up there? About being invisible? About being treated as less than I am? Did any of that resonate with you at all? You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. Finally, for the first time in years, I'm being completely honest about how your family treats me and how you've enabled it. I shook my head. And if you think that's dramatic, then you haven't been paying attention. Your father is going to what? Be angry? Good. He should be angry. Maybe it'll motivate him to do some self-reflection. This is insane. You're insane. Maybe I'm just done being sane in a way that only benefits other people. Gregory appeared then, cutting through the crowd with the kind of purposeful movement that suggested violence was being barely restrained. Patricia was right behind him, her face a mask of controlled fury. You, Gregory snarled, pointing at me like I was a servant who'd spilled wine. What you just did in there was honest, I interrupted, my voice calm. I was honest about who I am and what I do. If that made you uncomfortable, you might want to ask yourself why. You embarrassed us. You embarrassed this entire family. No, Gregory, I embarrassed you because everything I said was true and you know it. His face was turning an alarming shade of red. You charged us to use this building. You held that over our heads, made us pay for upgrades, treated us like common customers. You are common customers. You booked an event, you signed a contract, you made demands. That's exactly what customers do. We're family. Are we? I looked at him, at Patricia, at Sarah standing between us, looking like her world was ending. Because family knows each other. Family asks questions. Family shows interest in each other's lives. What you've been doing for 7 years isn't family, Gregory. It's exploitation with better manners. How dare you? I dare because I'm done being afraid of you. Done being impressed by your reputation. Done pretending that your approval matters to me. I felt something loosen in my chest, some final chain breaking. You're not as important as you think you are. Your connections are not as valuable as you pretend. And your family's standing is built on my money, and you know it. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the party noise from inside seemed to have faded, like the entire building was holding its breath. Patricia spoke for the first time, her voice cold and precise. "You are no longer welcome in our family." "Good," I said simply, "because I quit." I walked away then, left them standing there, pushed through the front doors into the cool night air. Behind me, I could hear raised voices, could imagine the chaos I just created, the conversations that would dominate this party and probably every family gathering for the next year. But I didn't look back. I went to my office, locked the door, stood at the window looking down at the front of my hotel, where valets were parking cars and guests were still arriving, oblivious to the drama inside. My phone was already buzzing. Sarah, probably. Or maybe one of her cousins or a family friend, someone who wanted to know what had happened, wanted explanations or apologies, or some way to make sense of what I'd done. I ignored it all. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up my email, and started drafting a message to my lawyer. Because if I was going to do this, if I was really going to burn down my marriage and my relationship with Sarah's family, I needed to do it properly. With documentation, with legal protection, with all the careful planning that I'd learned in business. I wasn't going to be the bad guy in this story, but I wasn't going to be the victim either. I was just going to be done. The party continued without me. I monitored it remotely through the security system, watched as people eventually returned to celebrating, as Melissa and Christopher cut their cake and gave their toasts and danced their first dance as an engaged couple. The drama I'd created became part of the story they'd tell about this night. Not the main story, I hoped, but definitely a subplot that would be mentioned whenever they recounted their engagement party. So Marcus showed up and basically told everyone he'd been funding the family for years. Yeah, that would be a thing now. Denise appeared at my office door around 9, knocked softly even though the door was open. "You're either a genius or an idiot," she said by way of greeting. "I haven't decided which." "Can I be both?" "Possibly." She came in, settled into the chair across from my desk. "The party's going fine, by the way. In case you were wondering, minimal disruption, guests are enjoying themselves. Melissa seems happy." "Good. Good. That's what matters." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, what matters is that you just nuked your marriage in front of 200 people. I leaned back, rubbed my eyes. "I didn't nuke my marriage. I just exposed the foundation it was built on." "Semantics." "Maybe." I looked at her. "Do you think I was wrong?" "Wrong? No. Unwise? Possibly. Necessary?" She paused. "Yeah, probably necessary." That's a very diplomatic answer. I'm a very diplomatic person. She crossed her legs, studied me. "Your father-in-law tried to have you removed from the building." I sat up. "What?" "About 10 minutes after you left the ballroom. He found Thomas, demanded that you be escorted off the premises for disrupting a private event. Thomas very politely reminded him that you own the building and that, technically, he's the guest here." Despite everything, I smiled. "How'd he take that?" "About as well as you'd expect. There was some bluster about lawyers, some threats about never using this venue again. 'Oh no, however will we survive without the Harrison family's business,' I said dryly. And then his wife calmed him down and reminded him that making a bigger scene would only make things worse. They're still downstairs, making the rounds, pretending everything's fine. Very old money of them. Performance is what they do best." Denise was quiet for a moment, then, "Your wife came looking for you. I told her you were in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed. She asked me to tell you she needs to talk to you. Tonight," she said. "It's important." Everything's always important to Sarah. "Marcus, I know, I know." I stood, moved to the window, looked down at the city lights spreading out below us. "I'll talk to her. Just not yet. I need to process what I just did, what it means." "What does it mean?" "I think it means my marriage is over." Saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. My marriage was over. 7 years, done. Not because of infidelity or abuse or any of the dramatic reasons marriages usually end, but because of something quieter, more insidious, being unseen, being unvalued, being reduced to a function instead of being recognized as a person. You don't know that, Denise said, but her voice lacked conviction. Don't I? I just stood in front of her entire family and told them that I've been funding their lifestyle for years while they treated me like I was nobody. I called out her father publicly, embarrassed her mother, made it clear that I'm done being their atem. What woman stays married to someone who does that? A woman who loves you more than she loves her family's approval. And if she doesn't, Denise didn't answer, which was answer enough. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Sarah, third call in the last hour. I let it go to voicemail. You'll have to talk to her eventually, Denise pointed out. I will. Tomorrow or the day after, when I've figured out what I actually want to say. I returned to my desk, opened the laptop again. Right now, I need to focus on protecting myself, financially, legally, all of it. You think it's going to get ugly? I think Gregory Harrison is a man who's used to getting his way, and I just humiliated him in front of his entire social circle. So yes, I think it's going to get very ugly. She stood, moved to the door, paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you did down there, standing up for yourself, making yourself visible, that took courage. A lot of people spend their whole lives being invisible because it's easier than demanding to be seen. Thank you. But Marcus, that courage is going to cost you. Be ready for that. After she left, I sat in the silence of my office and thought about cost, about what I'd already paid, 7 years of my life, hundreds of thousands of dollars, countless small moments where I'd swallowed my pride and accepted being less than I was, and about what I was about to pay. My marriage, probably. My relationship with Sarah's family, definitely. Maybe even my relationship with Sarah herself, depending on where her loyalties ultimately landed. It was expensive being visible, but being invisible had cost more. I stayed in my office until the party ended, watched through the security feeds as guests trickled out, as the ballroom slowly emptied, as my staff began the careful choreography of cleanup. Melissa and Christopher left around 11, both of them looking happy despite the earlier drama. That, at least, was something. Gregory and Patricia left shortly after, and even through the grainy security footage, I could see the tension in their posture, the way they moved through space like they were bracing for attack. Sarah left with them, which told me everything I needed to know about where she'd be spending the night. Not here, not with me. I left the office around midnight, took the elevator to my penthouse suite, and found an envelope slipped under my door. Hotel stationery, my name written in Sarah's elegant handwriting. I opened it. Marcus, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to process what you did tonight, what you said, what any of this means for us. Part of me is angry, so angry I can barely breathe. You humiliated my family, exposed private things in public, made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. But part of me knows you were right about my family, about how they've treated you, about me not paying attention. I've spent the last few hours thinking about the last 7 years, really thinking about them, and I'm seeing things I didn't want to see. I don't know if we can come back from this. I don't know if I can choose you over my family, or if you'd even want me to after everything that's happened. But I think we owe it to ourselves to try, to have a real conversation, not through anger or hurt, but honestly. Can we meet tomorrow? Somewhere neutral. Just us, no family, no agenda beyond figuring out if there's anything left to save. I love you. I know I haven't always shown it the way you needed, but I do love you, if that counts for anything anymore. Sarah, I read it 3 times trying to parse what she was actually saying. The apology was there, sort of, buried under defensiveness and conditional phrasing. The acknowledgement of the problem was there too, though framed in a way that suggested she still didn't quite understand the depth of it. But the willingness to try, that was new. That was something. I sat on the edge of my bed, the letter in my hands, and tried to figure out what I wanted. Did I want to save my marriage? Did I want Sarah to choose me over her family? Did I even believe that was possible? I didn't know, but I owed it to 7 years of history to find out. I texted her, tomorrow, 2 p.m., the coffee shop on 8th and Pine. Just us. Her response came immediately. Thank you, I'll be there. I didn't sleep well. Tossed, turned, replayed the evening in my head 1,000 times. The look on Gregory's face when I revealed I owned the hotel, the tears on Melissa's face when I said the upgrades were a gift, Sarah's expression when I said I quit the family. Had I gone too far? Had I been cruel, petty? Everything they'd probably say I was in the conversations they'd have after I left? Maybe, but I'd also been honest. Finally, completely honest. And that had to count for something. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that matched my mood. I went for a run, pushing myself harder than usual, trying to exhaust the nervous energy that had been building since last night. It didn't work. By the time I got back to the hotel, showered, changed, I was still wired, still running through scenarios of how the conversation with Sarah would go. Denise caught me at 11, pulled me into her office where she had coffee and pastries set up like we were having a normal Sunday meeting. "You look like hell," she said cheerfully. "I feel like hell." "Good, that means you're taking this seriously." She pushed a cup of coffee toward me. "Talk to me. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that I blew by my life last night, and now I have to figure out if there's anything worth salvaging." "Your marriage, you mean?" "My marriage, my relationship with Sarah, any chance of having a normal family dynamic." I sipped the coffee, barely tasted it. "I'm meeting her at 2. She wants to talk about whether there's anything left to save." "And what do you think?" "I think I don't know," which is probably not a great sign for a marriage. Denise was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I tell you something you probably don't want to hear? Have I ever been able to stop you?" "Fair point." She leaned forward. "I've watched you for 3 years, Marcus. Watched you build this business. Watched you grow them into the kind of leader people respect and trust. And in all that time, the only time I've seen you doubt yourself, second guess your worth, diminish your accomplishments, it's always been about your wife's family." "That's not, it is. Every time you have a family obligation, every time you write them a check, every time you come back from Sunday dinner, you're different, smaller. Like you've been reminded that no matter what you accomplish, you'll never be good enough for them." The truth of that hit harder than it should have. "So here's my unsolicited advice," she continued. "When you meet Sarah today, don't go in thinking about saving your marriage. Go in thinking about saving yourself. Figure out if she can be part of that, or if she's always going to choose them over you." That's a hell of a choice to force on someone. It's a hell of a choice she's been forcing on you for 7 years. She just never made it explicit. I left her office with that rattling around in my head. Saving myself, not the marriage, not the relationship, not even Sarah's feelings. Myself. The person I'd been before I'd learned to make myself smaller to fit into spaces that were never designed for me. The coffee shop on 8th and Pine was quiet when I arrived at 1:55. Sunday afternoon lull, most people either at church or brunch or recovering from Saturday night. I chose a table in the back corner, positioned so I could see the door, and waited. Sarah arrived at exactly 2 p.m., which was unlike her. She was usually fashionably late to everything, a power move she'd learned from her mother. But today, she was punctual, careful, her face scrubbed clean of the dramatic makeup she'd worn last night. She looked younger without it, vulnerable. She slid into the seat across from me, ordered a tea when the server came by, waited until we were alone again before speaking. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I said I would. "I know, but after last night, I wasn't sure you'd actually show up." "I always show up, Sarah. That's never been the problem." She flinched, and I felt bad about that. This was supposed to be a neutral conversation, not another fight. But the words had slipped out, automatic as breathing, 7 years of resentment condensed into one sentence. "You're right," she said, surprising me. "You do always show up. For me, for my family, for everything we've ever asked of you. I've never thanked you properly for that." "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know. You did it because you're a good person, because you love me, because you wanted to be part of something." She twisted her cup, not drinking, just needing something to do with her hands. "I've been thinking a lot since last night, about what you said, about how we've treated you, about everything. And you were right, about all of it. My family has been using you. I've been enabling it. We've taken your generosity and your kindness and treated it like it was owed to us instead of something to be grateful for. She looked up, met my eyes. I'm sorry, Marcus. Really, truly sorry. I wanted to feel relief at hearing that. Vindication, maybe. But all I felt was tired. What are you sorry for, specifically? I asked, echoing the question I'd asked her days ago. I'm sorry for not paying attention to your work, to your accomplishments, to who you are beyond being my husband. I'm sorry for letting my family treat you as less important than them. I'm sorry for getting angry when you called it out instead of standing up for you. She paused. And I'm sorry that it took you humiliating my father in public for me to actually see any of this clearly. I didn't mean to humiliate him. Yes, you did. She smiled sadly, and he deserved it. They all deserved it. What you said up there about reputation and reality not being the same thing, that was true. My father has spent his whole life building this image of success and importance. And somewhere along the way, he started believing it was real. He forgot that the foundation was rotten. Sarah, no, let me finish, please. She took a shaky breath. I called my mother this morning, told her I needed to understand something, asked her directly, does my father actually have any money? The question hung there, heavy with implication. She didn't want to tell me at first, tried to deflect, to change the subject, to make me feel guilty for asking. But I pushed, and eventually she admitted the truth. Sarah's voice dropped. They're broke, Marcus. Have been for years. The house, the cars, the lifestyle, it's all debt. They've been living on credit and family reputation in the assumption that something would come along to fix it. Something being me. Something being you, she confirmed. When we started dating, when you proposed, my father saw you as the solution. Not a son-in-law, not family, a solution to his financial problems. And she broke off, wiped at her eyes. I knew. Maybe not consciously, maybe I didn't let myself see it clearly, but I knew, and I went along with it because it was easier than confronting the truth about my family. I sat back trying to process this. Your mother told you all this? Once I started asking direct questions, yes, she was almost relieved, I think. Like she'd been waiting for someone to finally notice, to finally call it what it is. Sarah laughed, bitter and broken. Do you know what she said at the end? She said, at least now you understand why we need Marcus. Not why we value him, not why we're grateful for him, why we need him. Jesus. Yeah, she was crying properly now. Mascara-free tears tracking down her cheeks. So when you stood up there last night and said you were done being treated as less than you are, part of me was horrified because you were exposing our secrets. But part of me was grateful because someone finally was. Someone finally had the courage to say that the emperor has no clothes. We sat in silence for a while. Her tea cooled, untouched. My coffee did the same. The server circled a few times, decided to leave us alone. What do you want, Sarah? I asked finally. From this conversation, from this marriage, from me, what do you actually want? I want to fix this, to fix us. How? I don't know. She spread her hands, helpless. I don't know how to undo 7 years of damage, how to rebuild trust, how to prove to you that I can be different. But I want to try and make I want to be the wife you deserved from the beginning. And your family? Her expression crumbled. They're furious. My father said if I stay with you, I'm choosing to embarrass them further. My mother said I need to think about family loyalty, about where I came from. Melissa's caught in the middle, feeling guilty that her party caused all this. It didn't cause it. It just exposed it. I know. I told them that. She took a shaky breath. I told them that you were right, about everything, about them using you, about me enabling it, about all of it. And my father, she laughed, sharp and painful. My father said I was being brainwashed, that you'd manipulated me into turning against my own family. And what did you say? I said that maybe I was finally seeing clearly for the first time in years, and then I left. Spent the night at a hotel because I couldn't be in that house anymore. Couldn't listen to them spin this into something it's not. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, her careful composure completely shattered. I choose you, Marcus. I'm choosing you over them. I just hope it's not too late. I wanted to feel triumphant, vindicated. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For Sarah to see her family clearly, to stand up to them, to choose me for once instead of always choosing them. But sitting across from her, watching her cry, all I felt was sad. I need you to understand something, I said carefully. This isn't about making you choose between me and your family. This is about whether you can see me clearly, whether you can value me for who I actually am instead of who you need me to be. I do see Yuki, do you? Or do you just see the consequences of not seeing me? I leaned forward. Because here's what worries me, Sarah. You're saying all the right things now, after the crisis, after the public humiliation, after your mother confirmed what your fathers had been doing. But will you still see me clearly in 6 months? A year? When the drama fades and life goes back to normal? Or will we slip back into the same patterns because they're comfortable and familiar? I won't. I promise I won't. You can't promise that. None of us can. Change is hard, Sarah. It requires constant attention, constant choice, and I need to know that you're willing to do that work, not just in this moment of crisis, but every day going forward. I will. She reached across the table, tried to take my hand. I let her, but didn't squeeze back. Tell me what you need. Tell me how to fix this. I need time, I said. Time to think, to figure out what I actually want from this marriage. Time for you to prove that this isn't just guilt talking, that you're actually capable of changing the fundamental dynamics of how we relate to each other. How much time? I don't know. Weeks, maybe months. As long as it takes for me to trust that you see me as a person instead of a function. She pulled her hand back, wrapped both arms around herself. Are you saying you want a separation? I'm saying I want space. I'm staying at the hotel for now. You can stay at the house. I'll continue paying the mortgage, the bills, whatever you need. But I need distance to think clearly about whether this marriage is something worth fighting for. Do you still love me? The question was small, scared, but the kind of vulnerability Sarah rarely showed. I do, I said and meant it. But I'm starting to think love isn't enough. I need respect too, partnership, someone who knows me well enough to understand what I do for a living without me having to explain it like I'm a stranger. I can be that person. Maybe. I hope so. But I need to see it, not just hear it. We talked for another hour, circling the same territory from different angles. She apologized more, explained more, promised more. I listened, tried to stay open, tried to imagine a future where we actually worked as equal partners instead of as patron and dependent. I wanted to believe it was possible, but wanting wasn't the same as knowing. We left separately, her back to wherever she was staying, me back to the Meridian Grand. The rain had picked up, turning the streets slick and gray, the kind of weather that made you want to curl up somewhere warm and forget the world existed. I went back to my office, stood at the window looking out over my city, my building, the empire I'd built that no one in my personal life had bothered to notice. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Marcus Thornhill, a male voice, professional, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is James Morrison, attorney for Gregory Harrison. My client wishes to discuss a matter of some urgency regarding defamation and breach of privacy. Would you be available to speak with me this week? And there it was, the cost Denise had warned me about, arriving right on schedule. I smiled, couldn't help it. Tell your client that any communication needs to go through my attorney. I'll have her contact information sent to you within the hour. Mr. Thornhill, I'm sure we can resolve this more amicably. I'm sure we can't. Gregory Harrison has spent 7 years treating me like I don't matter. He doesn't get to start caring about my existence just because I finally made myself inconvenient. I hung up, immediately called my lawyer, Catherine Chen, who'd handled all my property acquisitions and who I trusted implicitly. Catherine, I need you to be ready for something ugly. How ugly? Gregory Harrison level ugly. She whistled. Okay, tell me everything. So I did. The whole story, from the invitation to the party to the speech to Sarah's revelation this afternoon. Catherine listened without interrupting, the way good lawyers do, occasionally making notes I could hear scratching in the background. Well, she said when I finished, this is going to be expensive and complicated and probably very public. But you're in the right, legally and morally. Everything you said was true. You said it on your own property, and truth is an absolute defense to defamation. He can threaten all he wants. He won't win. What about Sarah? If he goes after me, will she be caught in the middle? That depends on what she does. If she testifies against you, claims you lied or exaggerated, that could complicate things, but if she stands with you, Catherine paused. Actually, that could be very interesting, because if she confirms that her father has been financially dependent on you while presenting himself as wealthy and successful, that's not defamation. That's just embarrassing truth. He'll hate that. I'm counting on it. Sometimes the best defense is making the other side realize that discovery will expose more than they want exposed. We talked strategy for another hour, then I let her go with instructions to draft a formal response to Morrison's inevitable letter. The rest of Sunday passed in a blur of phone calls and emails and the kind of busy work that fills time without really accomplishing anything. I was restless, keyed up, my body still buzzing with the aftermath of adrenaline from the last 48 hours. Around 8 p.m., Denise appeared with takeout from the Thai place 2 blocks over. "You haven't eaten all day," she said, setting containers on my desk. "Don't argue, just eat." I ate. "Gregory Harrison has retained a lawyer," I said between bites. "Of course he has. What's he claiming?" "Defamation, apparently, and breach of privacy." "That's hilarious. What privacy did you breach?" "His privacy to pretend to be rich while spending your money." "Something like that." She settled into her chair, opened her own container of pad thai. "You know this is going to get worse before it gets better, right?" Catherine said the same thing. Catherine's smart. Listen to her. Denise twirled noodles around her fork. "What about Sarah? Where does she land in all this?" "She says she's choosing me, says she sees clearly now, wants to fix things." "And do you believe her?" "I want to." "That's not the same thing." "I know." I set down my fork, no longer hungry despite not having eaten all day. I told her I need time, space, to figure out if this marriage is salvageable. And is it? Ask me in a month, or 6, or however long it takes for me to trust that she actually sees me instead of just seeing the crisis. We finished eating in comfortable silence. Denise had a gift for that, knowing when to push and when to just be present. After 7 years of marriage to someone who always needed conversation, explanations, constant emotional processing, the silence felt like a gift. "What's your schedule look like tomorrow?" she asked as she gathered the empty containers. "The usual, some property inspections, a meeting with the accountant, reviewing Q4 projections. Take the day off." "What?" "Take the day off, Marcus. You just blew up your life. You're about to be in a legal battle with your father-in-law. Your marriage is in limbo. You need a break." "I don't take breaks." "I know, that's the problem." She stood, moved to the door. "I'm putting it on your calendar. One day. Do something for yourself that has nothing to do with property management or family drama or fixing other people's problems." "Like what?" "I don't know. Go to a museum, see a movie, sit in a park and stare at trees, whatever normal people do when they're not working." She paused at the door. "The Meridian Grand will survive one day without you, I promise." After she left, I sat in my office and thought about the last time I'd taken a day off that wasn't for a family obligation or a holiday I was expected to attend. Came up blank. Even our honeymoon had been abbreviated. Sarah had wanted 2 weeks in Europe, but I'd been in the middle of negotiations for my second property and had cut it to 1 week. She'd been disappointed but understanding, or at least she'd seemed understanding at the time. Now I wondered if she'd even noticed that I'd sacrificed what I wanted for what I needed to do, or if she'd just filed it away as more evidence that my work was more important than her. Maybe Denise was right. Maybe I did need a break. I opened my calendar, marked Monday as personal day in all caps, and closed my laptop before I could change my mind. Then I went to my suite, took a shower hot enough to hurt, and fell into bed with no idea what tomorrow would bring, but a strange sense that maybe, just maybe, I was finally moving in the right direction. Monday morning, I woke up with no plan and no obligations, which felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying. I'd spent so many years being busy, building my business, managing properties, attending family obligations, being the person everyone needed me to be, that I'd forgotten how to just exist. Without purpose, without schedule, without someone expecting something from me. It felt wrong, but also strangely right. I made coffee in the suite's kitchenette, stood at the window watching the city wake up below me. Monday morning rush hour, people streaming toward their homes, their responsibilities, their carefully constructed lives. I used to be one of them. Still was, technically. But today, I was playing hooky from my own life, and the transgression felt delicious. My phone buzzed. Sarah, are you awake? Can we talk? I stared at the message, weighing whether engaging would count as breaking my day off. Decided it would, taking today for myself. Can we talk tomorrow? Her response came quickly. Of course, take care of yourself. No guilt trip, no pressure, no making it about her needs. That was new. Good probably, though part of me was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I spent the morning wandering, not with any destination in mind, just walking through neighborhoods I usually only saw from my car. The Arts District with its galleries and coffee shops, the waterfront park where tourists took photos and locals walked dogs, the old industrial area that was slowly gentrifying, brick warehouses converting to lofts and artisan bakeries. I bought a paperback from a used bookstore, sat on a bench by the river, and read for 2 hours without checking my phone once. It was the most irresponsible I'd felt in years, and it was glorious. Around noon, hunger drove me to a sandwich shop I'd never noticed before, tucked between a vintage clothing store and a tattoo parlor. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and art on the walls from local students, where the owner knew the regulars by name and the menu was handwritten on a chalkboard. First time, the woman behind the counter asked as I studied the options. Is it that obvious? You have that look, like you're not sure if you're allowed to be here. She smiled, warm and knowing. You're allowed. What sounds good? I ordered something with roasted vegetables and fresh mozzarella, found a table by the window, and continued reading while I ate. The sandwich was excellent. The atmosphere was casual and comfortable. Nobody cared who I was or what I did or whether I was successful enough to deserve to be there. It was perfect. My phone stayed mostly quiet, a few work emails that I ignored. A text from Denise checking that I was actually taking the day off. One message from a number I didn't recognize, probably Gregory's lawyer, which I definitely ignored. The only call I answered was from Catherine Chen. Marcus, got your message about Morrison's call. He sent over a formal letter this morning. That was fast. Gregory Harrison doesn't strike me as a patient man. I could hear papers rustling. It's mostly bluster, threats of defamation suits, demands for public apology, vague insinuations about damaging his business relationships, nothing with real teeth. So we ignore it. We respond professionally, point out that truth is a defense to defamation, and invite him to pursue legal action if he feels he has grounds, which he doesn't. She paused. But Marcus, there's something else you should know. He's apparently been making calls. What kind of calls? To people in your professional network, other property owners, business contacts, anyone he thinks might care about his version of events, framing you as unstable, vindictive, someone who can't be trusted to maintain professional boundaries. I closed my eyes, felt anger spike hot in my chest. He's trying to damage my business. He's trying. Whether he'll succeed is another question. Most of the people he's contacted have known you for years. They know your reputation, but it's something to be aware of. Can we stop him? Not really. He's not saying anything actionable, just expressing concerns, raising questions, planting seeds of doubt. It's a whisper campaign, and those are hard to fight legally. She hesitated. But we can fight back in other ways. Start documenting everything. Every interaction, every expense you've covered for his family, every time he's misrepresented himself or his financial situation. Build a record that, if this goes to court, will make him look exactly as bad as he actually is. You think it'll go to court? I think Gregory Harrison is used to intimidating people into backing down. And when that doesn't work, he'll either escalate or retreat. We need to be ready for either option. After we hung up, I sat with my sandwich and my book and tried not to let rage ruin my day off. Gregory Harrison was doing exactly what I'd expected, trying to punish me for making him look bad, using whatever tools he had available to make my life difficult. The old me would have panicked, would have started making calls to reassure business contacts, would have gone into damage control mode immediately. The new me, this version who'd stood in front of 200 people and declared he was done being invisible, took a breath and decided that Gregory's whisper campaign said more about him than it did about me. Let him make his calls. Let him tell his version. People who knew me would see through it. And people who didn't know me well enough to see through it probably weren't worth having in my circle anyway. I finished my sandwich, tipped generously, and continued my aimless wandering. The afternoon found me at the art museum, a place I'd driven past hundreds of times but never actually entered. I paid admission, took a map from the bored teenager at the desk, and lost myself in galleries full of paintings and sculptures and installations that probably had deep meaning if you understood art theory, but that I just enjoyed looking at. There was something freeing about being in a space where I knew nothing, where I had no expertise or authority, where I could just be a person looking at things and feeling whatever I felt about them without needing to justify or explain. I stood in front of a massive abstract painting, all blues and grays swirling together like a storm, for 20 minutes, just staring, trying to figure out what it made me feel. Eventually decided it felt like my marriage, chaotic and beautiful, and impossible to parse into something that made logical sense. Rothko, a voice said beside me. I turned. An elderly woman, elegantly dressed, was studying the same painting. The artist, she clarified, Mark Rothko. He believed that art should evoke pure emotion without the interference of representational imagery. Is it working? I asked. You tell me, what do you feel? I considered. Sad, but also hopeful, like something's ending, but something else might be beginning. She smiled. Then it's working. Rothko would be pleased. We stood in silence for a moment more, then she moved on to the next gallery. I stayed with the Rothko for a few more minutes, thinking about endings and beginnings, and whether you could have one without the other. My phone buzzed. I almost didn't check it, but old habits die hard. Melissa, Sarah's sister, Marcus, I just wanted to say thank you for the party. It was perfect, truly perfect. And I'm sorry for all the family drama. You didn't deserve that. I stared at the message. Surprise. Melissa had always been kind to me, but I'd assumed she'd be angry about me disrupting her celebration, making it about family drama instead of her happiness. You don't need to apologize. I'm glad you had a good time. That's what mattered. Her response came quickly. I did. And between you and me, what you said about reputation versus reality. That needed to be said. Dad's been living in a fantasy world for years, and nobody's had the guts to call him on it. I'm glad you did. Even though it made things awkward? Especially because it made things awkward. Sometimes families need to be uncomfortable. Forces everyone to face truths they've been avoiding. We texted back and forth for a few minutes, and I learned things I hadn't known. That Melissa had been paying her own rent for years despite her parents implying they covered it. That she'd taken out student loans they'd promised to pay back but never did. That she'd learned young not to depend on Gregory for anything real. He's good at appearances, she wrote, but when you actually need him, he's never there. That's why what you did, being actually generous, actually showing up, meant so much to me. You're more family than he's ever been. I left the museum feeling lighter, less alone. At least one person in Sarah's family understood. At least one person saw me clearly. The evening I spent back at the huddle, but not working, just existing in my suite, ordering room service, watching mindless television, letting my brain rest from the constant churn of problem-solving and decision-making, and trying to figure out how to fix everything. Some things couldn't be fixed by thinking harder. Sometimes you just had to let time do its work. Around 9 p.m., Sarah called. I answered. Hi, she said, her voice tentative. Hi, how was your day off? Strange? Good. I went to the art museum. You never go to museums. I know. Maybe I should start. Silence for a moment, comfortable rather than awkward. Marcus, I met with a therapist today, for myself, I mean, to work through some things about my family, my patterns, my inability to see what was right in front of me. I sat up straighter. That's really good, Sarah. It was hard. She asked a lot of questions I didn't want to answer. But I think I need someone outside the situation to help me see clearly. She paused. She suggested couples counseling too. For us, if you're willing. I'm willing, eventually. But I think we both need some individual work first. Agreed. I could hear her breathing, the small sounds of her moving around whatever space she was in. I'm staying at Emily's for now, my cousin, she clarified when I didn't immediately respond. She's been great, letting me talk through everything, not judging, just listening. I'm glad you have support. So am I. I didn't realize how much I needed it until I had it. Another pause. My father called today, told me I need to come to my senses and support the family, told me I was betraying everyone by not defending him. What did you say? I told him I was tired of defending the indefensible, and then I hung up. She laughed, shaky but genuine. It felt good, terrifying but good. I'm proud of you. Yeah? Her voice got small. Because I don't feel very proud. I feel like I'm destroying my family. You're not destroying anything, Sarah. You're just refusing to pretend anymore. There's a difference. Yeah. My mother said I'm choosing you over them. Like it's a betrayal. Is it a betrayal? No, it's choosing reality over fantasy. It's choosing integrity over appearances. She sighed. But it still hurts. I know. Change usually does. We talked for another hour and it felt different than our usual conversations. Less performative, less careful. She wasn't trying to manage me or placate me or convince me of anything. She was just being honest about how hard this was, how scared she was, how much she was learning about herself that she didn't particularly like. It was the most real conversation we'd had in years. Can I see you tomorrow? She asked as we were winding down. Yeah, come by the hotel. We can have lunch in the restaurant, talk more. Not the house? Not yet. I'm not ready to go back there yet. Okay, I understand. A beat. Marcus, I love you. I know I've said it before, but I want you to know I mean it. Really mean it. Not because I'm supposed to or because I'm scared of losing you, but because I actually do. I love you too, I said and meant it. But love isn't our problem, Sarah. It never was. I know. Our problem is whether I can learn to be the partner you deserve instead of the wife I was raised to be. And can you? I'm going to try like hell. That's all I can promise. That's enough, for now. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my suite and thought about second chances, about whether people could really change, or if they just became better at managing the parts of themselves that had always been there. I didn't know the answer, but for the first time in a long time, I was willing to wait and find out. 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. I went back to work, back to the routine of running my properties and making decisions and being the person my staff needed me to be. But something had shifted. I was less willing to accept things that didn't serve me, more comfortable setting boundaries, more aware of my own worth. Denise noticed. You're different, she said one afternoon, catching me in the hallway between meetings. Different how? Harder to push around, more sure of yourself. It's good. I spent my evenings alone mostly, reading, thinking, going for long walks around the city. Sometimes Sarah would meet me for dinner, and we'd talk, really talk, about real things without the performance that had always defined our interactions before. She was in therapy twice a week now, working through her family dynamics, her codependence, her learned behaviors around pleasing people at the expense of herself. It was hard work. I could see it wearing on her, the constant examination of patterns she'd always taken for granted. But she stuck with it, showed up consistently, did the work even when it was uncomfortable. That counted for something. Melissa and Christopher's wedding was scheduled for 3 months out, and Melissa had asked if the Meridian Grand could host it. Not demanded, not assumed. Asked, with a budget she'd saved herself and at a genuine request that felt nothing like her father's entitled demands. I'd said yes without hesitation. Family discount. Real family discount, because Melissa had always treated me like I mattered. Gregory, unsurprisingly, had a problem with this. His lawyer sent increasingly aggressive letters demanding meetings, negotiations, settlements. Catherine batted them away with professional courtesy and steel-spined legal arguments, pointing out that Gregory had no standing to demand anything, that every action I'd taken was legal and truthful, that his reputation was suffering because of his own actions, not mine. The whisper campaign continued for a while, Gregory calling business contacts and painting me as unstable. But it fizzled faster than he'd probably hoped. Most people in my professional network knew me well enough to be skeptical of his claims, and a few called me directly to say they'd been contacted and had dismissed everything he'd said. Gregory Harrison tried to tell me you were unethical, one of my fellow property owners said over drinks one evening. I told him I'd worked with you for 5 years, and the only thing unethical about you was how fair you are in negotiations. Made him so mad he hung up on me. We'd laughed about that, about Gregory's inability to understand that reputation was something you earned through actions, not something you could manufacture through connections and performance. His campaign against me was backfiring spectacularly. But Gregory Harrison wasn't a man who admitted defeat gracefully. 3 weeks after Melissa's engagement party, I got a call from someone I didn't expect. Patricia, Sarah's mother. Marcus, she said when I answered, her voice carefully controlled. I was hoping we could meet, just the two of us, to discuss this situation like adults. What situation would that be? Don't be obtuse. This vendetta you're pursuing against Gregory. This need to humiliate him publicly and destroy his relationships. I'm not pursuing anything, Patricia. I'm living my life. If Gregory's reputation is suffering, that's a consequence of his own actions, not mine. He's my husband, the father of my children, and you're tearing him apart. No, I'm refusing to keep propping him up. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment, then, please meet with me. One conversation. If after that you still hate us, fine, but give me a chance to explain. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a restaurant downtown, neutral territory, upscale enough that Patricia would feel comfortable, but not so formal that it felt like a negotiation. She arrived exactly on time, dressed impeccably as always. But I noticed things I'd never noticed before. The slight wear on her handbag strap, the way her jewelry was expensive but not new, the careful makeup that covered lines deeper than they should be for a woman her age. She looked tired, not just physically, but existentially, like she'd been holding up a facade for so long that the weight of it was starting to crush her. Thank you for coming, she said as we settled at our table. I'm curious what you have to say. Direct as always. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's something I've always appreciated about you, actually. You don't play games. Unlike your family? Unlike my family, she agreed, surprising me. We're very good at games, the Harrisons. Performance, appearance, maintaining status. It's what we were taught, what we learned to value above almost everything else, including honesty, especially honesty. She ordered wine when the server came, waited until we were alone again before continuing. I'm not here to defend Gregory. What he did, charging you for your own property, treating you as less than family, expecting your support without gratitude, it was wrong. I've told him so. I'm sure he took that well. He didn't, but that's not why I'm here. She leaned forward slightly. I'm here to ask you not to destroy him completely. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. Aren't you? The speech at the party, the legal responses, refusing to back down when he's trying to save face. You're dismantling everything he's built. Everything he's built is a lie, Patricia. You said so yourself. Yes, it's a lie. But it's the lie we've lived with for 30 years. It's the lie that kept us in our house, in our social circle, in the life we'd always known. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you know what it's like to wake up one day and realize everything you thought you had is gone? That the stability you counted on was never real? Actually, yes, that's exactly how I felt when I discovered my wife's family had been using me for 7 years. She flinched. That's fair, and I'm sorry. Truly sorry for my part in that. I encouraged Gregory's behavior, encouraged Sarah to lean on you because it was easier than facing our reality, which was that Gregory made bad investments 20 years ago, that we'd been living beyond our means for decades, that our standing was purchased on credit and maintained through pretense. She looked down at her wine. I should have stopped him. Should have insisted we downsize, cut back, live within our actual means. But I was scared. Scared of losing the life I'd always known. Scared of what people would say. Scared of admitting we'd failed. So you let your husband charge your daughter's husband rent on his own property instead. Yes, and that was unconscionable. I see that now. She met my eyes. But Marcus, I'm not asking you to forgive us. I'm asking you to show mercy. Gregory's reputation is all he has left. If you destroy that completely, you're not just hurting him. You're hurting Sarah, hurting your marriage, hurting any chance of this family healing. Sarah is working on healing. In therapy, setting boundaries, learning to separate her identity from yours. I know, she told me, and I'm proud of her for that, even if it terrifies me. Patricia's composure was cracking now, real emotion showing through. But she still loves her father, Marcus, even knowing what he is, what he's done. And if you humiliate him so thoroughly that he can never recover, she'll have to choose between you and what's left of her family. She's already chosen. Has she? Or has she just chosen not to choose yet? Patricia took a shaky breath. I'm asking you, as a mother who loves her daughter, to consider showing some grace. Not for Gregory, he doesn't deserve it, but for Sarah. For the possibility that someday, when all this pain has settled, you might want a relationship with your in-laws that isn't defined entirely by anger. I sat back, studied this woman who'd always seemed untouchable, perfect, above the concerns of normal people. Seeing her vulnerable was unsettling, like watching a statue cry. What exactly are you asking for? I said finally. I'm asking you to call off your lawyer, to stop responding to Gregory's attempts to salvage his reputation, to let him fade into quieter obscurity instead of being publicly destroyed. And in return? In return, we'll stop the whisper campaign. Gregory will apologize, privately, to you for how he's treated you. We'll respect your boundaries, your marriage, your right to decide what relationship, if any, you want with us going forward. She paused. And we'll never ask you for money again. No more emergencies, no more investments, no more family obligations that require your checkbook. We'll figure out our own finances. Downsize if we have to, whatever it takes to stop being a burden. You'll forgive me if I don't take that on faith. I don't expect you to. I'll put it in writing, a formal agreement, signed and notarized, that we release you from any financial obligations to our family. I thought about it, about what she was offering, what it would mean. Gregory silenced. The family backed off, a clear boundary established in legal terms. It was more than I'd expected, honestly. More than I'd thought Patricia was capable of giving. I need to talk to my lawyer, I said, and to Sarah. This affects her too. Of course, take whatever time you need. She finished her wine, set the glass down with careful precision. Marcus, I know we've given you no reason to trust us, but I'm asking anyway, not for Gregory's sake, but for Sarah's. She deserves a chance at happiness, and she seems to think you're central to that. Don't let our mistakes cost her everything. She left money on the table for the wine she'd ordered, stood with the grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime learning to exit rooms with dignity, and walked away. I sat alone at the table for a long time after, trying to figure out if I'd just been manipulated or offered something genuine. Probably both. I called Catherine that evening, told her about the meeting, about Patricia's proposal. It's not a bad offer, she said after thinking it over. Getting them to back off completely in writing would save you a lot of ongoing headache. And it gives you leverage. If they violate the agreement, you've got documented proof of their harassment. You think it's genuine? I think Patricia Harrison is desperate. Whether that makes her more or less trustworthy is your call. I called Sarah next. Your mother met with me today, I said when she answered. I know. She told me she was going to. I didn't try to stop her. Why not? Because I thought you deserved to hear her out. Even if you decide not to take whatever she offered, you deserve the chance to hear it directly from her instead of filtered through me. I told her about the proposal, the agreement, the promise to back off permanently. Do you believe her? Sarah asked when I finished. I don't know. Do you? She was quiet for a long moment. I think my mother is capable of change when she's scared enough. And she's scared right now of losing her daughter, of her husband's reputation completely collapsing, of the life she's known ending badly. A pause. I also think she means what she said about the money. Not because she's suddenly ethical, but because she knows continuing to lean on you would cost her any relationship with me. And your father? My father will do whatever my mother tells him to at this point. He's broken, Marcus. The Whisper campaign failed. His lawyer can't intimidate you. Everyone he tried to turn against you saw through it. He's got nothing left except accepting whatever terms you're willing to give. How do you feel about that? Sad? Relieved? Guilty for feeling relieved? She laughed, hollow. Mostly I just feel tired of it all. I want to move forward, whatever that looks like. I want to stop having every conversation circle back to my family's dysfunction. Me too. So what are you going to do? I thought about it, about Gregory's humiliation, about Patricia's desperation, about Sarah trying so hard to rebuild herself into someone capable of healthy relationships, about whether revenge was worth it, whether making Gregory suffer more would actually make me feel better, or just extend the misery for everyone involved. I'm going to accept, I said finally, with conditions. Everything in writing, everything legally binding, and if they violate any part of it, Catherine gets to destroy them publicly with no holding back. That's fair. And Sarah, I need you to be okay with this. If I'm setting boundaries with your family, you need to be able to support that even when it's hard. I know, and I will. My therapist has been helping me understand that loving my family and protecting myself from them aren't mutually exclusive. She paused. Besides, them backing off is probably the best thing that could happen for everyone. Forces them to actually deal with their problems instead of using you as a buffer. We talked for another hour, hashing out details, discussing what this might mean for our future. It was easier than these conversations used to be. Less defensive, less about winning points, more about actually solving problems together. Progress. Slow, painful progress. But progress nonetheless. Catherine drafted the agreement over the next week. It was comprehensive, detailed, and absolutely unambiguous. Gregory and Patricia Harrison would cease all attempts to solicit financial support from Marcus Thornhill, would refrain from making disparaging comments about him professionally or personally, would respect all boundaries established regarding communication and family events, and would acknowledge in writing that any previous financial support had been voluntary and created no ongoing obligation. In return, I would instruct my attorney to cease all responsive legal action to Gregory's baseless claims, would not pursue defamation charges for his Whisper campaign, and would allow the matter to settle without further public comment. Gregory signed it. Took him 3 days, and according to Patricia, several hours of shouting and denial and finally acceptance. But he signed it. The apology came separately, delivered by hand via Patricia because Gregory apparently couldn't bring himself to face me directly. Marcus, I was wrong about how I treated you, about assuming your support without gratitude, about charging you for use of property you owned. I allowed my pride and my fear of financial reality to override basic decency, and for that I apologize. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I recognize my failures, and I won't repeat them. Gregory Harrison. It was terse, probably written with Catherine's and Patricia's input, but it was there. An acknowledgement. An ending. I filed it away with the signed agreement and tried to figure out how I felt. Vindicated? Yes. Relieved? Definitely. Satisfied? Not quite. Because revenge, even justified revenge, doesn't heal anything. It just creates a different kind of wound. But it did create space. Space for Sarah and me to figure out our marriage without her family's interference. Space for me to exist without being used. Space for everyone to be honest about who they actually were instead of who they pretended to be. And maybe that was enough. 3 months later, I stood in the ballroom of the Meridian Grand watching Melissa Harrison marry Christopher Ashford. It was beautiful. Of course it was beautiful. My staff didn't do anything halfway, and they'd outdone themselves for this event. Flowers everywhere, lighting perfect, music elegant without being stuffy. The kind of wedding that made you believe in love, even if you were cynical about it. Sarah stood beside me, her hand in mine, watching her little sister glow with happiness. We'd been doing couples therapy for 2 months now. It was hard work, uncomfortable work, the kind of sessions where you left feeling worse before you felt better. But we were both showing up, both doing the work, both trying to rebuild something that had nearly broken completely. We weren't living together yet. I was still in the penthouse at the Meridian Grand, Sarah still at her cousin Emily's place. We saw each other regularly, dinners, walks, occasional weekends away, but we'd agreed we needed more time before resuming full cohabitation. Needed to make sure we were changing patterns, not just papering over problems. It was slower than either of us wanted, but it felt right. "She's so happy," Sarah whispered as Melissa and Christopher exchanged vows. "She is. Thank you for hosting this, for giving her this. She's family, real family." Sarah squeezed my hand, and I knew she understood what I meant. Melissa had earned the designation through years of actually treating me like I mattered, not through the accident of shared day. Gregory and Patricia were there, of course, sitting in the front row, looking elegant and diminished at the same time. We'd exchanged polite greetings when we'd arrived, had managed brief small talk that stayed carefully surface level. They looked older than they had 3 months ago, smaller somehow, like the removal of pretense had literally shrunk them. They'd sold Willowcrest 2 weeks prior. Downsized to a condo in a nice but not prestigious neighborhood, started living within their actual means for probably the first time in decades. Patricia had joined some charity boards that actually did work instead of just providing social connections. Gregory had quietly resigned from several positions that had been more title than substance. They were adapting. Slowly, painfully, but adapting. Sarah had been visiting them more frequently since the move, helping Patricia sort through decades of accumulated possessions, listening to Gregory talk about his regrets, rebuilding relationships on more honest foundations. I didn't join her for those visits yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. Some wounds needed more time. The ceremony concluded with applause and tears, happy tears, the kind that came from witnessing something genuine and good. Melissa and Christopher practically floated down the aisle, radiant in that way that only newly married people are. The reception was lively, joyful, everything an engagement party should have been without the weight of family drama crushing it. I made the rounds, chatted with guests, accepted congratulations on the venue with genuine pride. This was my space, my accomplishment. And for once I didn't minimize it or deflect credit. Denise found me during the cocktail hour. "Hell of an event," she said, surveying the room with professional satisfaction. "Even better than the engagement party. Better because nobody's getting publicly called out for their dysfunction. That helps. But also because everyone here actually seems happy. No undercurrents, no tension, just people celebrating." She was right. The energy was completely different from that night 3 months ago. Lighter, cleaner, genuine. "Marcus?" A voice behind me. I turned to find Christopher, Melissa's new husband, looking slightly nervous. "Could I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course." We moved to a quieter corner. Christopher was a good kid, mid-20s, worked in tech, seemed genuinely devoted to Melissa in a way that made me think they'd probably be okay. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for this venue, for how you've treated Melissa, for—" He paused, choosing words carefully, "for showing me what it looks like to stand up for yourself in family situations." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "My family's got some of the same dynamics. Old money pretenses, expectations about maintaining appearances, using people without acknowledging it. I've always just gone along, easier than rocking the boat. He glanced back at the reception, at Melissa laughing with her friends. But watching how you handled the Harrison situation, setting boundaries, demanding respect, refusing to be invisible, it made me realize I don't have to keep being the guy who just accepts everything to keep the peace. That's a hard realization. Yeah, but an important one. He smiled. Melissa and I have been talking about how we want our marriage to be different, how we want to start fresh without carrying all the family baggage forward. Your example helped with that, so thank you. After he left, I stood alone for a moment, processing that. I thought the speech at the engagement party had been about me, my frustration, my hurt, my need to be seen. But maybe it had been bigger than that. Maybe calling out dysfunction publicly gave permission to other people to do the same privately. Sarah found me as dinner was being served. "You okay?" she asked, reading something in my expression. "Yeah, well, just thinking." About? About how none of us exist in isolation, how the things we do ripple out in ways we don't expect. She smiled. That's very philosophical for a Saturday evening. I contain multitudes. You do. She took my hand again, threaded her fingers through mine. Come on, we're at the family table. The family table was different than I'd expected. Just Sarah and me, Melissa and Christopher, and Emily, Sarah's cousin who'd been hosting her. Patricia and Gregory were at a different table with older relatives, a physical representation of the new boundaries we'd established. It felt right. Dinner was excellent. My catering team had absolutely delivered. Conversation flowed easily, stories and laughter, and the comfortable rhythm of people who actually enjoyed each other's company. Melissa kept beaming at me, grateful in a way that felt genuine rather than performative. During dessert, she stood and tapped her glass. "I know we're doing official toasts later," she said, "but I wanted to say something now while I have the chance. Marcus," she looked directly at me, "thank you. Not just for this venue, though it's absolutely perfect and more than I dreamed of, but for everything you've been to this family, the support, the generosity, the grace you've shown even when we didn't deserve it." The room had gone quiet, people turning to listen. "A few months ago at my engagement party, you stood up and said some hard truths, things that needed to be said, even though saying them was difficult. And I know it caused problems. I know it made things complicated, but it also freed us, freed this family to be honest instead of performative, to acknowledge our problems instead of hiding them." She raised her glass. "So here's to Marcus Thornhill, for being brave enough to demand to be seen and for showing the rest of us that it's okay to do the same." The applause that followed was warm, genuine. People were smiling at me, not in the careful way you smile at someone you're obligated to be nice to, but in the way you smile at someone you actually appreciate. Gregory, I noticed, was not applauding, but Patricia was, and there were tears on her face. Progress, I thought, slow and imperfect, but progress. The reception continued into the evening. Dancing, laughter, the kind of celebration that makes you remember why people get married in the first place. Sarah and I danced, slow songs mostly, her head on my shoulder. Both of us quiet in the comfortable way that felt new and old at the same time. "I'm glad you're here," she said at one point. "I wasn't sure you would be." "I almost wasn't." "What changed your mind?" "Melissa, this place. The recognition that being part of a family doesn't mean accepting abuse. It means choosing the people who actually value you." I pulled back enough to look at her. "You're working to be one of those people. That matters." "Am I? Working hard enough, I mean?" "You're showing up. That's more than a lot of people do." We swayed to the music, and I thought about the last 3 months. The therapy sessions where we'd cried and fought and said things that were hard to hear. The slow rebuilding of trust. The moments of connection that felt new even after 7 years of marriage. It wasn't perfect. We still had hard days. Still fought sometimes, still struggled with old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But we were trying, both of us, genuinely trying to build something better than what we'd had. That had to count for something. The evening wound down around 11. Melissa and Christopher left in a shower of sparklers and good wishes, off to their honeymoon in Portugal. Guests trickled away, thanking me for a beautiful event, for the venue, for the experience. Patricia approached as I was talking to one of the catering staff. "Marcus," she said quietly, "might I have a word?" We stepped away from the crowd, found a quiet corner near the lobby. "It was a beautiful wedding," she said. "It was. Thank you for hosting it, for being so gracious to Melissa when we've given you every reason not to be." Melissa's never given me a reason to be anything but gracious. No, she hasn't. Patricia looked back toward the ballroom where Gregory was gathering their things. "He wanted to tell you himself, but he's too proud. So I'll say it. We're grateful for the agreement, for letting this end without further destruction, for giving us a chance to fix our lives with some dignity intact." How's that going, the fixing? It's hard, harder than I expected. Learning to live within our means, letting go of the status we'd clung to for so long. She smiled sadly. But it's also freeing in a strange way. No more pretending, no more desperate attempts to maintain appearances. Just being who we actually are, which is two people who made terrible choices and are trying to do better. Not for redemption, I don't think we deserve that, but for our daughter, our grandchildren someday, the possibility of a family that's built on truth instead of performance. It was the most honest I'd ever heard her be. Not perfect, still wrapped in enough self-justification to make me skeptical, but honest nonetheless. "I hope you find that," I said, genuinely. "Thank you." She hesitated. Then, "Sarah talks about you constantly, about therapy, about the work you're both doing, about how different things feel now. She's happier than I've seen her in years, even with all the difficulty. We're trying. I can see that, and I'm glad." She touched my arm briefly, a gesture that felt both familiar and strange. "Take care of my daughter, Marcus. Not financially. You've done more than enough of that. But emotionally, she needs someone who actually sees her, who doesn't need her to be perfect. I think you're that person. I'm trying to be." After she left, I found Sarah in the now empty ballroom, standing alone among the flowers in the elegant chaos of a party winding down. "Ready to go?" I asked. "Almost. I just wanted to stand here for a minute, take it in." She turned to me. "This place is yours. You built this. And I'm so sorry it took me so long to really see that." "You see it now. That's what matters." "Do I, though? Fully?" She gestured around us. "You own 5 buildings, Marcus. 5. And I've never visited the other 4. I've never asked to see them. Never shown interest in what makes them special, or challenging, or worthwhile." "So ask now," she blinked. "What?" "Ask now. Show interest now. We can't change the past 7 years, Sarah, but we can change what comes next." She smiled, tentative but genuine. "Okay, show me. Tomorrow, if you're free. Give me the tour of your empire that I should have asked for years ago." "Deal." We left the hotel together, Sarah's hand in mine, walking to our separate cars because we still weren't ready for the same address, but we were getting closer. She kissed me goodnight, longer than necessary, like she was trying to communicate something words couldn't quite capture. "I love you," she said when we pulled apart. "I love you too. And Marcus, thank you for not giving up on us when you had every right to." "I haven't given up. I've just demanded better. There's a difference." "I know. That's why I'm grateful." I watched her drive away, then got in my own car and sat for a moment in the quiet darkness of the parking garage. My phone buzzed. Denise, texting from inside. "Hell of a night. Your speech at the engagement party seems to have inspired some personal growth all around. Who knew calling people on their BS could be therapeutic?" I smiled, typed back. "Turns out honesty is good for people. Wish someone had told me that 7 years ago." "You weren't ready 7 years ago. You are now. That's what matters." She was right. 7 years ago, I'd been too eager to be accepted, too willing to minimize myself to fit into spaces that weren't designed for me. I'd needed to be invisible because visibility felt too risky, too vulnerable. Now I understood that invisibility was its own kind of risk, a slower, quieter kind that eroded you from the inside until you forgot who you'd been before you learned to disappear. I drove back to the Meridian Grand, to my building, my accomplishment, my space in the world, and took the elevator to my penthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. Tomorrow I'd show Sarah the other properties. Would walk her through the buildings I'd bought and renovated and filled with purpose. Would share that part of my life I'd tried so hard to share before, but that she'd never been ready to receive. Tomorrow we'd take another step toward whatever our marriage was becoming. But tonight I stood at my window looking out over my city and allowed myself to feel proud. Not arrogant, not self-satisfied, just quietly proud of what I'd built and who I'd become and the courage it had taken to demand to be seen. It had cost me. Denise had been right about that. It had cost my relationship with my in-laws, cost months of turmoil and therapy and difficult conversations, cost the easy comfort of being small and invisible and unthreatening. But being invisible had cost more, and I was done paying that price.